What if the very thing that makes you feel most lost, the sheer unadulterated randomness of life, is actually the only tool you have left to find yourself?
That and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Welcome to Haanaan Wins. It is Sunday, August 23rd, and honestly, I am feeling incredibly centered today. We had a massive release of energy with the fire ritual and the dancing a few days ago, and it feels like the storm has finally cleared from my head.
I'm just here for the bitter tea and the fact that I don't have to deal with the WNBA's recent equipment malfunction news. Apparently, sex toys are being tossed onto the court again. Truly, the chaos of the world is peak comedy right now.
It's getting weird, Jane. Between the trade wars and the lunar eclipse coming up, it feels like the universe is just vibrating.
Speaking of vibrating, Paco is currently MIA. He's reportedly stuck in a heated, very loud debate with Seth about whether the recent Bitcoin surge is Divson intervention or just a glitch in the simulation.
And Seth is currently attempting to analyze the recent US-Canada tariff crisis, using nothing but a spreadsheet and sheer stubbornness. He's essentially gone underground into his data.
So, it's just us. And since we can't rely on the news to make sense, we might as well look at something that teaches us how to thrive when nothing does.
Exactly. Today, we're diving into Unfailing the Chaos well, looking at the principles through the lens of Phil Hine's condensed chaos. We aren't talking about spells in the way you think. We're looking at chaos magic as the original, most practical life hack for an era where truth is a moving target.
Let's get into the software update.
So we're looking at the table of contents here, and honestly, it feels less like a textbook and more like a roadmap for a psychedelic trip. Chaos servitors, the magic of ego, Callie in a disco club. I love the energy already.
It's definitely not your grandmother's seance guide. But look, right at the start, Hine gets straight to the point. He's giving us the lineage. He says the roots are in every tradition, but if you need one name, it's Austin Osman Speer.
Speer, the artist. And I love this detail. He says Speer actually created this system exclusively for himself. He wasn't trying to start a movement. He was just doing his thing.
Which, honestly, is the most chaotic way to start a revolution.
Right? But then you have the 1978 crowd, the Illuminates of Thanateros. They took Speer's personal toolkit and said, hey, let's see if this works for a group. And it did. They turned a personal practice into a global network.
And here's where it gets interesting for us. Look at how he defines chaos versus cosmos. He says cosmos is just an ordered universe that exists only in your head.
Wait, so order is just a mental construct? That's a massive claim.
Exactly. He's saying the order, we see the rules, the structures, is just a psychological comfort blanket. Chaos is the thing in itself, the raw, unpredictable reality.
It reminds me of what we were saying about the algorithms. The algorithm tries to create a cosmos for you, a predictable, ordered feed, but the real world is always breaking out of that box.
And if you want the software update we mentioned, look at this creed from Sherwin. It's brutal. He says, I believe in nothing. I know what I know, and I postulate theories that may or may not enter my system of accepted beliefs.
I believe in nothing. That sounds so nihilistic at first, but then he follows it up with, I create and destroy my beliefs, relying only on their utility.
That's the hack, Em. It's not about finding the truth. It's about asking, does this belief help me navigate today? It's purely functional. He even says there are no gods or demons, except for the ones your conditioning forced you to accept, or the ones you created yourself.
Wow, that completely reframes the whole occult concept. It's not about worshiping something external, it's about auditing your own programming.
Precisely. It's about looking at your fears and your biases and saying, I built this, now I can unbuild it.
It's almost like he's saying magic is a tool for cognitive liberty. And he ties it back to the cosmos idea. Magic isn't about turning chaos into order. It's about actively shaping your reality using the chaos.
And he's pulling from everywhere: Tantric Buddhism, Voodoo, Crowley, even Discordianism. No dogma, no messianic leaders, just freedom and humor.
I love that he mentions humor, because let's be real, if you can't laugh at the absurdity of a universe that's fundamentally unpredictable, you're going to lose your mind.
True, but then we get to this preface by Peter Carroll, and he starts bringing in the heavy hitters. He's basically saying that while the 19th century Golden Dawn was all about this heavy colonial-era symbolism, Spare brought a psychotechnical trick that bypassed all that fluff.
He's calling it postmodern even before postmodernism was a thing. He's linking it to quantum physics. He says quantum physics provides this massive support for metaphysical theory.
Yeah, he's leaning hard into the idea that the chaos mathematics and chaos theory in science actually validate the magician's experience. That subatomic uncertainty is just the macro world's version of what magicians have been playing with for years.
It's like he's trying to bridge the gap between the lab and the ritual space.
But then Hine jumps into chapter 1, and he gets a little more visceral. He starts by defining magic, and he doesn't start with spells. He starts with the art of change.
He says we live in a world of artificially imposed systems of social and personal control that feed us lies.
Don't we all?
Right. And he says magic is the refusal to be a helpless cog in the machine. It's the art of changing your life according to your own responsibility.
But then, and here's where he gets spicy, he calls out the fake stuff. He says people have intentionally tangled magic in impenetrable jungles of special terminology just to look important.
Oh, I feel attacked. All those spiritual hierarchies and Babylonian towers of inner planes he mentions, he's basically calling out the spiritual influencers who use jargon to gatekeep.
He's saying, stop looking for secret knowledge in dead languages or ancient tombs. Look at the mystery of life right in front of you.
He actually lists what magic does do. It's not all just rebellion. It's about breaking childhood constraints, modifying your own emotional reactions, developing charisma, and this is my favorite, living interestingly.
Magic is that which provides pleasure.
I can get behind that.
But it ends on this heavy note, setting the stage for the rest of the book. He says chaos magic is being branded as black witchcraft, or just an intellectual trick, but he insists it's a response to the failure of the scientific worldview to explain the whole human experience.
It's a revolution of the mind. We're participating in the construction of the universe. Okay, so we've been talking about the vibe of chaos magic, but now Hine is actually laying out the manual. He's moving from the philosophy into what he calls the central principles.
And he immediately gives us a disclaimer. He says, these aren't universal axioms, so you can change them with a clear conscience.
I love that. It's like saying, here are the rules, but feel free to rewrite them if they stop working.
Right. The first one is rejection of dogmatism. He mentions the Discordians who, by the way, use this term, naughty or naughtims instead of dogmas. He says chaos magicians reserve the right to change their minds, contradict themselves, and even argue against their own points.
Because why spend all your energy trying to be right? He literally asks, what's so bad about being wrong sometimes?
Honestly, it's a relief. It's much more exhausting to defend a fortress of truth than to just pivot.
But then he hits principle 2, and this is where he gets a little spicy with the armchair theorists. He says never believe anyone's word, test everything through your own experience.
He's coming for the people who just read books and pretend they're experts. He says if you ask a fake expert a question they can't answer, they'll either drown in their own verbal diarrhea or just say, who the hell knows?
Who the hell knows is a perfectly valid magical stance. It's so much more honest than pretending to have a direct line to a deity.
Exactly. And he says that if you strip away the dogma and the personal biases, the actual technique becomes incredibly simple to describe. It's all about the doing.
But don't get it twisted, though. He follows that up with principle 3, technical mastery. He's warning us against the idea that chaos magic is just doing whatever you want without checking the results.
Yeah, he's saying you can't just throw random stuff at a wall and call it magic. You need sober self-analysis. You have to practice the techniques until you actually get the results you're looking for. It's a discipline.
It's about putting in the work. If you're going to play with the fabric of reality, you might as well learn how to sew. Right.
Totally. And then we get to principle 4, which is arguably the most important one for the software update we keep talking about, deconditioning.
This is the heavy stuff. He says the whole point is to free yourself from the artfully imposed ideas of who you are, what society wants, and even your own political or religious identities.
He gets really interesting here. He says the ego is just an illusion of a stable self that stays alive by making distinctions like, this is me, that is not me, or I like this, I hate that.
He's saying our very sense of identity is actually a set of boundaries that keeps us stuck.
Right, and by doing deconditioning exercises, we start widening the cracks in the building of our consensus reality. We make the walls permeable so we can modify our beliefs instead of being prisoners to them.
It's like, instead of being a statue, you're becoming liquid.
A very strategic, highly controlled liquid.
Which leads to Principle 5, diversity of approaches. He says because there's no fixed model, one magician might be using Taoism, another might be using Star Trek themes, and another is using pop culture.
No wonder the accuracy buffs hate it. He says you'll almost never find two chaos magicians doing the same thing. It's pure eclecticism.
And the final principle in this chunk is Gnosis. He's talking about entering altered states of consciousness, but he breaks it down into two poles, inhibition and excitation.
Inhibition is the passive side meditation, yoga, staring into a crystal ball.
And excitation is the act of side chanting, drumming, dancing, or even sexual energy.
It's all about finding the right frequency to bypass the conscious mind.
It's fascinating because he then dives into the history, and it's so 70s UK. He talks about the birth as a movement in West Yorkshire, amidst the rise of punk rock and the scientific discovery of fractals.
It's such a perfect intersection. You've got the raw, rebellious energy of punk clashing with the mathematical complexity of chaos theory.
And he traces it through the Illuminates of Thanateros and Peter Carroll's Liber Null. But he goes back to Speer again, calling him the grandfather of the movement. He talks about how Speer would just draw portraits of the spirits he was communicating with.
No big scary ceremonies, just art and sigils.
And then he brings in Crowley. He doesn't treat him like a saint, but he acknowledges that Crowley's psychocosmos, this massive lived-in mental universe, is a template that actually works.
Because Crowley wasn't just following a tradition, he was constructing his own path from whatever happened to be at hand.
Which honestly is the goal, isn't it? Not finding a path that's already there, but building one as you walk. So, moving into the meat of the text, Hine starts talking about the actual spread of these ideas. He mentions how Peter Carroll's Liber Null and Liber Albus, along with all these articles, in Lamp of Thoth really acted like a viral marketing campaign for the movement.
A viral campaign for magic. I love it.
But look at his core claim here. He says the main idea of chaos magic is as simple as sex. It's all about the practice. He says no amount of theorizing or intellectual reflection can replace real, lived experience.
He's basically calling out the philosophy majors of the occult world.
Exactly. He says Carroll intentionally focused on the skeleton of techniques because, even if the symbols, beliefs, and dogmas are different between systems, the actual practical methods are often the same.
It's like saying you can use a hammer to build a house, a shed, or a throne. The wood and the nails change, but the physics of the swing stays the same.
Right. He even says you can pick any symbol system you want, because the web of beliefs surrounding them is just a tool to reach the goal, not the goal itself.
Which brings us to the heavy hitters he mentions next, Robert Anton Wilson and the Discordians.
Oh, I love the Discordians. He says they worship Eris, the Greek goddess of chaos, and he describes their vibe as the polar opposite of classic magic. Where classic magic is all gloomy seriousness and importance, Discordianism is all humor, playfulness, and, well, absolute carelessness.
It's the anti-gatekeeper energy. He says traditional occultists always have this habit of acting like they're a chosen elite. But the Discordians, they're a tribe of philosophers, theologians, magicians, scientists, artists, and jesters.
It's such a messy, beautiful list. And he tracks Eris's history, how she was the daughter of Night and wife of Kronos, producing this whole delightful brood of sorrow, forgetfulness, hunger, disease, and even lies.
Delightful children indeed.
But then he gets into this really wild bit about how she disappeared after the fall of the ancient states, only to resurrect in the 1950s through two Californians, Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst and Malakalitz the Younger.
The keepers of the sacred chaos? They basically claim there are no rules unless you invent them yourself.
And that's why Eris went from a historical footnote to a mythic superstar. Her influence spreads through the Discordian tactic of declaring everyone a legitimate pope.
Talk about a hack for instant authority.
But then, he brings it back to the myth of the Trojan War, the golden apple. Eris tosses it into the wedding of the gods, and suddenly Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite are fighting over who is the most beautiful.
It's a chaos seed. one little piece of fruit and suddenly you have a decade-long war.
And look at how Aphrodite wins. She doesn't use a sword. She loosens the ties and belts of her tunic to bride Paris.
Very tactical, very much in the spirit of results over ethics.
Exactly, but Hine brings it back to the modern day. He says while Ellen has quieted down a bit lately, modern Discordians credit her with all the strangeness, synchronicities, and even the mad parties in their lives.
She's the patron saint of the unexpected.
And here's that hot moment I was waiting for. He says, rituals performed with a silly face can be just as effective as rituals performed with a serious face.
See, this is what I'm talking about. It's the way to dismantle that pompous occultist ego. If you can laugh at your own ritual, you've already won.
He says we are too significant to take ourselves seriously. He even claims some members of the Illuminates of Thanateros use laughter specifically to break people out of different forms of addiction.
It's a psychological way to break the grip of the ego.
He reinforces that chaos magic isn't a system, because it doesn't try to preserve a tradition. It's built on sci-fi, quantum physics, and whatever else works. It's purely postmodern. It doesn't care about authenticity. It only cares if it works.
But he admits it has a sinister reputation. He gives us 3 reasons why. First, the do-it-yourself mix-and-match approach scares the traditionalists. Second, people hear chaos and think anarchy and total destruction.
And third, the edgy publications actually helped their reputation because they attracted people who were just ego-hungry for some dark fame.
The satanic branding. It's such a cliche.
Yeah, he says it mostly just attracted people who wanted to be the opposite of the pure white groups. It became a playground for people looking for a fight.
But underlying all that, he's saying it's actually an experimental testing ground. A place to test whether the stuff people blindly accept as truth is actually real.
He ends this section by talking about the 80s boom, the rise of Chaos International magazines, and the accessibility of information. He's saying that while chaos magic might not be the mainstream yet, its ideas are spreading through the internet and word of mouth, breaking down the walls between different occult traditions.
It's not about building a new wall. It's about tearing the old ones down.
Just making the whole thing a lot more interesting to live in. My brain is actually spinning from all that heavy lifting. Let's grab some water and take 5.
Agreed. I need to step away before my ego completely dissolves into this conversation.
Okay, we're back. Okay, so we are back. We're diving into the meat of Phil Hine's condensed chaos now, looking at how this whole chaos thing isn't just some spooky occult vibe, but actually hooks directly into how science changed in the late 20th century.
Right, because nothing says magical ritual like a lecture on nonlinear dynamics.
No, but listen, he's making this huge point right here. He says the development of chaos science and chaos magic are happening strikingly synchronously. He points to 1987, this huge exhibition of scientific chaos in Leeds, England, and then, almost immediately, the first chaos magic symposium happens in the same city.
So, the universe is basically running the same software update at the same time in both the lab and the ritual circle.
Exactly. He even mentions how chaos became this massive aesthetic in the 90s. Fractals on t-shirts, raised posters, all of a piece. It's like the math was leaking into the culture.
I mean, I get the vibe. Fractals are everywhere. But he's getting into the actual mechanics of it now. He's talking about how a fractal is a structure where the parts look like the whole. You zoom in on a mountain, a cloud, or a coastline, and the pattern stays the same.
And here is the hack, Jane. Look at how he uses this. He says, we can model consciousness as a fractal.
Wait, what?
He's saying that when we think creatively, we start with scattered, disconnected thoughts, and as they weave together, this pattern emerges. It's not a straight line, it's a self-organizing system.
Okay, I see where he's going. He's trying to dismantle this idea of linear thinking. Like, we think life happens in a neat, predictable A to B sequence, but chaos theory says the complexity is hidden right underneath the surface.
Right, and he hits on something so personal here. He says we think of normal consciousness as this steady, fixed state, but then he calls it a fiction. He says we are constantly shifting. We're daydreaming, we're focused on a song, we're lost in a memory. We are moving between states of awareness every single second.
So, normal is just a label we use because we're too lazy to track the actual fluctuations.
Precisely. He says consciousness works in an analog or continuous mode. It's not discrete steps, it's a flow.
But then he brings in the heavy hitters. He links this back to the idea that we often confuse the map with the territory. We think our models of reality are reality.
And that leads him straight to the golden rule of this whole book. He brings up Haanaan Saba, the leader of the assassins, and that famous mantra, nothing is true, everything is permitted.
A get-out-of-jail-free card for the Edo.
He argues that if nothing is true, then you don't need to waste energy proving your beliefs or finding some objective scientific truth for them. If nothing is true, then everything becomes an art, a game, a fantasy.
It's terrifying, though. If nothing is true, you're stuck with total responsibility for every single belief you adopt. There's no authority to hide behind.
But that's the point. He says because we know we use beliefs to interpret reality, we can use that ability. We can manipulate it. We use belief as a tool, not a cage.
He's basically saying, don't get attached to the software, just use what works for the task at hand.
Exactly. And he shows how magic itself has been shifting through these models. First, you had this spiritual model, spirits, demons, gods, all these discrete entities you have to negotiate with.
Very old school. Go talk to a demon, hope it doesn't eat you.
Exactly. Then, in the 18th century, it shifted to the energetic model, focusing on subtle energies, things like prana or even Reichs or Gon. And then, with Freud and Jung, the whole thing went internal. The demons just became parts of your subconscious.
So the other worlds just moved inside our own heads.
They became internal worlds. The magic didn't disappear, the map just changed. Okay, so we just finished talking about how the demons moved from the outside worlds into our psychology. But Hine is about to take it one step further. He's introducing this third pillar, the cybernetic model.
Sounds like something straight out of a cyberpunk novel. Is he going to tell us we can cast spells via Wi-Fi?
Not quite. But listen to how he describes it. He says that in our info culture, this model is huge. He says the universe is stochastic by nature. Basically, it's inherently random and unpredictable. And magic? Magic is a set of techniques that trigger a neurological storm in your own mind.
A neurological storm. That's a heavy way to put it.
It gets wilder. He says this storm creates these tiny, microscopic fluctuations in the universe, which then lead to macroscopic changes that align with what the magician intended. He literally calls it the butterfly effect.
So, you tweak a neuron, and suddenly there's a hurricane in Florida?
Exactly. He's saying the hack is using your own brain's electrical, chemical chaos to nudge the larger system. He even compares it to the New Age idea that crystals work like computer microchips.
So it's all about the circuitry. I mean, I've seen people try to program their meditations so it tracks, but he says there's a way to blend these all together, right?
Yeah, he says a good practitioner shouldn't just pick one. He suggests that if you're talking to a skeptic, use the psychological model, it's easier to digest. If you're talking to a tech geek, use the cybernetic one.
And if you're talking to a scientist?
Well, he gives this great example. He says scientists used to dismiss acupuncture because it was based on energetic models, but now that we have the theory of endorphin stimulation, they've moved it into mainstream hospitals. He's saying, find the language that fits the listener's software.
Use the terminology that gets past their firewall. I like that. But wait, he's warning us about getting stuck, right?
Right. He says if you spend more time defending your favorite model than actually modifying it, you need deconditioning. You're becoming too rigid.
Which brings us to chapter 2. And man, he comes out swinging here. He starts talking about this false dichotomy between high and low magic.
Yeah, he traces this back to the Enlightenment and Christianity. The idea that high magic is all about spiritual growth and low magic is just manipulation of the material world. Like one is holy and the other is just tacky.
Like there's a class system for sorcery.
Exactly. And he says that old school high magicians were basically trying to build these massive abstract towers to escape the material world. But Hine is like, look, their magic worked, we're still here. But he's also saying their time is over. We don't need rebellious angels anymore.
He's moving into the material side of things now. He says modern magic is obsessed with results, speed, and instant enlightenment. Like we're trying to download a god into our brains in 5 seconds.
And he warns that this is dangerous. He says magic is powerful because it changes things, and change is inherently risky. He compares it to how we thought atomic energy would be this utopia in the 60s, but then, well, we saw what happened.
Yeah, not exactly a peaceful energy source for everyone.
And he gets really poignant here. He says that performing real magic takes years of intense effort, study, and analysis. It's more than a quick trick. He says a strong magician is often alone in a crowd, and that if you feel too much of that loneliness, you should actually grieve.
Wow, that's heavy. You cannot change the world without being changed yourself.
Every acquisition of power requires self-sacrifice. It's a beautiful, brutal way to put it.
But then he pivots back to the chaos of it all. He says the reason people call chaos magic unrighteous is because it focuses on observable results in the real world rather than just spiritual improvement.
He compares it to science. Scientists stopped trying to understand nature as a whole mystery and started looking at tiny, abstract, measurable bits. He's saying, don't be the person who claims massive magical power, but is totally powerless to actually change anything in their daily life.
So, all the inner light in the world doesn't matter if you can't even fix your own kitchen sink.
Precisely. He ends this section with a declaration of intent. He says for magic to work, you have to be crystal clear about the result you want and match your technique to that specific intention. No more vague, zippy rituals without a point.
So, no more wishing on stars without a blueprint. Just pure calculated chaotic intent.
Exactly. The blueprint is the chaos itself. So we left off with Hine talking about that declaration of an intent, and he's getting really specific here. He's saying, look, if you're going to summon something, any specific entity or force you can't just be vague. You have to know exactly how this work is going to impact your life.
Because vibes don't pay the rent.
Exactly. He says chaos magicians solved this by being incredibly strict. You use a formula. I express the will to perform in order to achieve. It's almost like writing a line of code.
It's a command, no if or maybe. Just execute task, deliver output.
But then, and this is the part that always makes me nervous, he moves into self-assessment. He says even when you get good at magic, you're still prone to self-delusion. You're prone to being blind to your own messy parts.
Well, yeah. It's much easier to ignore the stuff that doesn't fit the heroic magician narrative we've built for ourselves.
Right, and he makes this huge distinction here. In a lot of other systems, you have a guru or a master. They're the ones who see you. They tell you where you're failing and where you need to go.
The way to outsource your ego. Don't worry, master says you're doing great.
But in chaos magic, he says the responsibility is yours, period. You can consult spirits, you can use divination, you can ask your friends, but at the end of the day, you are the one who has to evaluate your own progress.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But he says if you can master the ability to observe your enough thoughts and feelings with detachment and objectivity, you can use that skill in literally every area of your life.
So, it's a mental fitness program, not a magic trick.
Precisely. And he starts talking about models and metaphors next. He says that all these complex occult theories, chakras, Akashic records, karma, all of it are just people trying to describe the world using very simple, often clunky terms.
Like trying to describe a 4K movie using only Morse code.
Yes, and he says chaos magic does the opposite. We don't want big, heavy, all-encompassing theories. We want simple models for abstract experiences. He brings up Peter Carroll, the big name in the movement, saying that metaphysics is ultimately just a matter of belief.
Which brings us back to that nothing is true thing. If it's just belief, then the model is just a tool.
Exactly. He says practitioners use metaphors from everywhere: biology, ecology, science fiction, even computer programming. He actually shares a personal story about how his chapter on servitors came from him studying the COBOL programming language.
COBOL? That's ancient. That's like casting a spell with a typewriter.
But he says it worked. He was looking at the properties of the language and asking, can I turn this into a magical action? And he found he could. And here's the warning, he says, models can become invisible traps.
Oh, I know that feeling. You get so into a new way of thinking, a new diet, a new political ideology, a new spiritual path, and suddenly you can't see anything outside of those boundaries. You become a prisoner to your own map.
Right. So instead of trying to build one giant, perfect theory, he says we should use whatever model is most effective for the specific situation. He tells the story about a friend who wanted a protective talisman for her house.
Let me guess. He didn't make a physical object?
No. He says the easiest way would have been to just wrap the house in a protective screen, metaphorically. But he wanted her to feel the protection. So he had her perform a full, elaborate, high-ritual Kabbalistic ceremony with all the bells and whistles.
So he used the high magic software to run a low magic task.
Exactly, because the goal wasn't the object, it was the experience of the protection.
It's clever, but it's also risky, because once you start playing with these boundaries, the line between me and not me starts to blur.
And that's exactly where he goes next. He talks about how our very idea of I and other is built on this outdated 19th century idea that mind and matter are totally separate.
The mechanical view. The world is a machine, and I am a ghost driving it.
Right, and he says this model is actually a way to justify being superior to others. We use stereotypes, even positive ones, to simplify people into categories so we don't have to deal with their actual complexity.
It's much easier to interact with a role than a person.
Exactly, and he brings it back to magic. He says we can call gods archetypes or subpersonalities, but we have to ask, do we actually believe these things have their own intentions, independent of us? Or are we just projecting our own egos onto them?
Because if it's all just me, then I'm not a magician. I'm just talking to a mirror.
And he warns that it's too easy to look at things from our own little bell tower, thinking our perspective is the only one that matters. He says true magic requires the ability to shift your perspective to actually feel what it's like to be the other.
Which is basically deconditioning.
But then he hits us with a real brain bender. He says science in its modern form has been trying to separate consciousness from the body, calling it spirit versus machine.
The old dualism.
And he says chaos magic rejects that entirely. He says consciousness arises from the body.
Wait, so no ghost in the machine?
No, he's saying the software is an emergent property of the hardware. It's all one system. And that changes everything about how we approach the ritual. My brain is officially fried from all this dualism talk. Let's grab a quick water break.
Please, I need to step away before I start questioning if my chair actually exists.
Okay, we're back. And I've been staring at this opening paragraph of Hine's condensed chaos for 20 minutes, just trying to wrap my head around this whole Theros consciousness thing he mentions.
It sounds like a fancy way to say you aren't just a brain in a jar, Em.
Right, but listen to how he phrases it. He says people use this term to emphasize that consciousness and body are a single whole. And then this is the part that gets me. He says if you accept that, the whole division between subjective and objective starts to fall apart.
Because there is no outside looking in, right? It's like, if you're part of the system, you can enough claim to be a detached observer.
Exactly, and he ties this directly to chaos science. He says the objective world we thought was all math and measurable rules actually has this high level of fuzziness and uncertainty.
Which is a huge relief, honestly. If the world were perfectly predictable, we'd just be characters in a pre-written script. But he goes further. He says the idea of a physiological machine just moving through a passive environment is, well, primitive.
He wants us to look at ecologies. He literally tells the reader, go into a forest or anywhere in nature. He says you enter a dynamic ecosystem where everything, the plants, the weather, even the local myths is interconnected. And when you enter that, you become an element of it.
It's a feedback loop. Your sensations depend on how you interact with things you don't even notice yet. It reminds me of that night with the handpan, Emily. We were part of the air in the sunset.
Yes, and he uses this to pivot to a huge claim about the I and the other. He says we are too quick to judge and interpret new situations immediately. We rush to label things instead of letting them exist.
And then he drops the hammer. He says if nothing is true, everything is permitted, then life has no higher meaning or great cosmic plan other than the one we choose to believe in.
It sounds so bleak to some people.
But for a chaos magician, he calls it a dizzy and intoxicating gulp of freedom.
It is. But it leads right into this heavy concept of achievable reality. He defines magic as a set of techniques to expand the boundaries of what we think is possible.
But he acknowledges the cynicism too. He says the biggest barrier is people doubting if magic can even work.
And his solution is so visceral. He says, just like sex, magic must be practiced directly to be fully understood. One single action that proves magic works is worth 1,000 books on occult theory.
Spoken like a true practitioner. No fluff, just results.
But wait, he gets critical here. He says a lot of magic theory is just a messy pile of borrowed ideas, theosophy, pop psychology, alternative physics. He says the question of truth is actually irrelevant.
Because only practical implementation gives a concept vitality.
Right. It's not about whether the theory is consistent. It's about whether it works. He says people get shocked because he's asking them to forget orthodox theory and rely only on personal experience.
Which is exactly why I won't touch my didgeridoo. It's too much personal experience for one night.
But look at what he says about power. This part is so counterintuitive. He says we often think power means breaking all limits. But he says absolute unconstrained power in the modern world is a fiction.
Yeah, no kidding. Even the US president can just snap his fingers and fix everything. He uses the hostage crisis in Iran as an example. The military might was there, but the actual power to achieve the result was limited by the situation.
So he redefines magical power as the ability to achieve a desired result within the constraints of a given situation.
That's actually really grounded. It's not about being a god, it's about being effective.
And he distinguishes between external power like money or legal authority and internal power, which is that personal feeling of I can that comes from your own creative or magical acts.
He even mentions the siddhis, the telepathy, the levitation, the spoon bending. He says these aren't magic tricks, they are achievements that come from discipline and patience.
He ends this section with such a beautiful thought. He says magic is a two-way street. You use magic to change things, but in doing so, magic changes you. You aren't creating a magical territory separate from your life. You're just letting the strange, the irrational, and the inexplicable into your everyday reality.
Letting the chaos in. I think we'd had enough of that for one session.
Okay, I need a second. I think I just felt my heart rate spike reading that.
Let me guess. The part where the Twilight Zone invades your living room?
Yes, Hine moves from this beautiful idea of being part of an ecosystem to something much more intrusive. He says, mastering ritual magic, you can learn to summon spirits, but what happens when the spirits summon you?
That's the classic horror movie setup, the uninvited guest trope.
But he's not talking about ghosts in a haunted mansion. He's talking about the blur. He says the shadows and the flickers, this magical territory, eventually start showing up in your own home. And here's the kicker. He says there are no ready-made scripts for this. No training manual for when your hallway suddenly becomes a different dimension.
Because you're learning on the fly. He says you're just listening to friends and your own experience. It's wild because he claims these sensations are so real they overwhelm you despite all rational explanations.
He even describes the physical reaction. He says, whenever I am present with the strange, I tremble, and the corners of my eyes sting with tears.
That's more than scary, Em. That's a visceral physiological response. And he uses that to differentiate between a genuine encounter and just, an overactive imagination.
Exactly. And he makes this really important point. He says we can't assume these entities are just tools for us. They aren't just at our disposal. He says the illusion of that breaks the moment a spirit appears without being called, especially if someone else sees it too.
Right. You can't pretend it's just a psychological trick when your roommate is looking at the same 2-meter tall shadow in the stairwell and saying, hey, that guy looks like he wants to give us power.
That's the exact example he uses. He tells this story about a friend who saw a huge, shadowy human figure in the stairwell. In the funniest, most chaos magic part, they actually interrogated it. They asked it questions, and when it was being vague and unhelpful, they just told it to leave them alone.
Honestly, relatable. If a shadow person won't give me the answers I want, I'm not staying for tea.
But look how he describes their attitude. They accepted the entity's presence completely, but they were totally skeptical of its answers. They didn't care if it was real or not. They just cared if it was useful or not.
It goes back to that core principle we talked about earlier, results over theory.
Yeah, but then he shows how this unpredictable magic can actually shatter a person's entire reality. He tells this story about a woman, a feminist, very politically active, who was reading Crowley's Hymn to Pan. She was feeling this intense tension, and she accidentally knocked a tarot deck off a shelf.
And the devil card landed face up, right at her feet.
Right, and he says at that moment, her world crumbled like a house of cards. He says you can call it synchronicity or chaos, but the point is, it changed her world in an instant.
It's that deconditioning we mentioned, the sudden violent breaking of an old belief system.
And then he gets really blunt. He says you can't really seek these encounters. He calls it the Twilight Zone, because things like UFOs don't show up for people who are constantly looking for them. They show up for the most ordinary people.
Which sounds like a convenient excuse for when nothing is happening.
Maybe, but he says there are certain states of being that help. Physical exhaustion, for one, it sharpens your senses. But mental exhaustion, that dulls everything. It makes you blind to the incursions.
It's like the brain's firewall is down.
So he suggests the best stance is just, what happens, happens. He even references Austin Osman Sira here. It doesn't matter, therefore it needn't be. Just a way to stay relaxed.
I like that. Don't overthink the demon, just deal with the demon.
But then he gets personal. He admits he used to think magic was just disguised psychology. But then one night, he woke up and felt something heavy and blurry sitting on his chest.
Oh no, sleep paralysis?
He's terrified. He says he literally almost shat himself. He had to manually visualize a pentagram and project it outward just to make the thing vanish. He says that moment proved to him, more than any book ever could, that magic is absolutely real.
Okay, so the theory ends and the how-to begins.
Yeah, because chapter 3 starts with a massive reality check. He says, to become a mage requires time, practice, and experience. And he basically tells anyone thinking they can just read a few books to become a mage, you're wrong.
No kidding.
He brings up Crowley, saying that while Crowley said magic is for everyone, if you look at his friends, a lot of them ended up in asylums or in poverty. So clearly magic is not for everyone.
Because it's not a hobby, it's an extreme sport.
Exactly. He says a mage is someone who understands that the world is incredibly complex and they have to stay on guard to protect their ability to adapt. He calls magic the science of extreme situations.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. He says a lot of people use occultism to escape responsibility. They want the power without the work. But he insists that these abilities are developed through internal discipline and the application of theory in real life.
It's not a Saturday sale item. You can't just pick it up off a shelf.
Right. And he ends this intro with this incredible challenge. He says anyone can claim to be a mage. You can even find followers who believe you. But if you want to prove it, the only way to truly test if you're a mage is to change your environment and prove yourself a mage there too.
Well, I guess we'll have to see if we can handle the next chapter without the room turning into shadows.
My brain is actually vibrating from that last bit. Let's grab some water and take a quick breather.
Good call. I need to make sure my shadow realm hasn't manifested in the kitchen yet.
Okay, we're back. Okay, we are back, and I am still buzzing from that ritual last night, but I think it's time to ground ourselves.
Grounded, please. You were dancing like a whirlwind. But yeah, let's settle in. We're diving straight into the meat of Phil Hine's condensed chaos.
Right, and I want to start with this distinction he makes right at the beginning. He's talking about the line between elementary and high magic. Most people think elementary is just for babies, like something you outgrow once you're serious.
Exactly. Like it's some kind of magical middle school.
Right, but Hine completely flips that. He says in Chaos Magic, elementary just means any technique that is simple, effective, and works in daily life. It doesn't matter if you're a master or a total newbie. If it works, it's elementary.
I love that. It strips away all that elitist pretension. It's not about how many dusty books you've read, it's about whether the software update actually changed your reality.
Exactly, but... And here's the kicker. He follows that up with a reality check. He says you can't just hack your way to mastery through some intensive overnight course. He says, and I quote, "One Sunday seminar will not turn you into a mage, just as a one-day driving course won't turn you into a professional driver."
Ouch. Talk about a buzzkill for the get-rich-quick crowd.
It's heavy, isn't it? He's saying it takes time, effort, and this is the part that hits home discipline. He says the path can feel exhausting and ineffective at times. You might not even see results for a long time.
Sounds like my last attempt at the yoga retreat. But wait, he makes a point about why we do the boring stuff. He says building these small, disciplined habits like being able to even sit still for 5 minutes actually builds your self-confidence. And he ties it back to the core idea: belief in yourself is the path to successfully mastering magic.
It's all connected. If you can't keep a promise to yourself to meditate, how can you expect to command the universe?
And he calls out the real enemy. It's not demons or dark forces, Emily. It's your own inertia.
He really goes for the throat there.
He literally says you're declaring war on your own laziness. He lists all those classic excuses we use. I'll sleep in, I'll do it longer tomorrow, I don't have time. He says these excuses are actually signs that your limitations are fighting back to protect your comfortable, mediocre life.
That actually gave me chills. Like when I find myself making excuses to skip my breathwork, it's my ego trying to sabotage the change.
Exactly. He says if you're finding convincing excuses to avoid practice, it's actually a good sign. It means you're actually threatening your status quo.
That's such a powerful reframe. So if you're struggling, you might actually be onto something big. But to keep track of all this chaos, he moves into something very practical: the magic diary.
The confessional.
Yes, he says if it isn't recorded, it didn't happen. He wants you to log everything: the weather, the moon phase, how you felt, even your random intuitive sparks. He even says your diary might one day be a valuable document for historians.
Imagine me, 100 years from now, being studied because I recorded that I felt weirdly spooked by my didgeridoo at 2 a.m.
But seriously, he stresses the importance of a regular schedule. But, and this is a huge but, he tells you to be realistic. Don't promise an hour a day if you can only do 5 minutes. He says it is more useful to practice the chosen technique frequently and briefly than long and rarely.
Yeah, 5 minutes of daily meditation is way better than a 30-minute session once every 3 weeks. It's about that software update, staying active in the background.
But he does add one warning: don't burn out. He says if you feel like you're just going through the motions because you're exhausted, take a vacation. Even taking a break from magic is in itself a magical act.
That's profound. Stepping back to let the ideas settle.
It's all part of the cycle. He ends this section by describing the 3 stages of learning. You start with huge enthusiasm and great results. Then, you hit the dull training stage.
The boring part.
The part where you start making excuses again because you're just... He says this is the critical period where everyone fails. You have to push through the boredom to reach the mastery.
So, no shortcuts, just pure, unadulterated, disciplined persistence.
Just the way we like it. Okay, so we just went through the boring phase, but Hine says there's a light at the end of the tunnel. He says if you can just push through that stage where everything feels like a chore, you hit stage 3.
And what's stage 3?
It's when you start finding joy in the very things that used to bore you. He says it's like learning to read or write as a kid. First, it's a fun game. Then it's a heavy, annoying chore. And then suddenly, you're doing it without even trying.
The effortless stage. That's the dream, isn't it? To have the magic just flow, like breathing.
Exactly. But to get there, he says you need a way to actually measure if you're moving or just spinning your wheels. He calls it self-assessment.
Because magic is so vague. It's not like checking your bank balance.
Right. He says it's easy to get lost in the fog. You either end up with an inflated ego, thinking you're a god, or a totally deflated one, thinking you're making zero progress.
I've definitely seen people in that inflated camp. It's a bit much.
Well, he gives us a way out, the 2-column method in your diary. One side, your strengths, other side, your weaknesses. He even says to write down the internal dialogues where you gently lie to yourself and say, I can't do this.
That's the real work, confronting the self-deception. Know thyself, right? He links it back to the Eleusinian mysteries. It's the whole point.
But as much as we love the solo grind, he drops a massive warning here. He says, isolation precedes madness.
Whoa, that's a heavy call-out.
He's saying that even though magic is often written for the lone practitioner, we are social creatures. We need that friendly ear to discuss ideas and progress. Magic isn't about escaping the world, it's about being more effective in it.
Yeah, because if you can't talk about what's happening inside you, you're just spiraling in a vacuum. And speaking of spiraling, he starts listing these magical errors. And the first one is magophilia.
Megophilia? Is that a disease?
Close. He describes it as this syndrome where people think they can do anything like cross the abyss or fix their bank account overnight and then they start acting. Well, idiotic.
Oh, I know exactly the type. The person who enters a state of exaltation and suddenly thinks they're the center of the universe.
Exactly. They think they're above everyone else, and they act so important that everyone else just wants to stay far away from them. Hine says their buffoonery actually drives people away from magic.
That's so sad. They become a warning instead of an inspiration. And then he moves to the next one, obsession.
Which, let's be honest, is a very easy trap to fall into.
He admits it himself. He says he used to be obsessed, talking about magic to anyone who would, even if they had zero interest. He says it's a sign of a lack of social connection.
It's that look at me energy. And then there's the cosmic tragedy error. This one is actually kind of funny in a dark way.
The people who think every little thing is a sign?
Yeah, he says people rush in wanting to fix the world or reach enlightenment instantly. They take a normal bad week and decide it's a cosmic initiation that determines the fate of humanity.
Like, oh no, I lost my keys, the universe is collapsing.
Exactly. It's that hyperinflation of meaning, and it leads straight into the next one, paranoia.
Oh, this is the scary part. He says we are incredibly good at creating an e-atmosphere where something strange is happening, like a full-scale magical attack.
And then we start looking for enemies. Satanists, black lodges, chaos mages.
But look at what he says next. He challenges that. He says in 9 out of 10 cases, if you feel like you're being attacked, you should just look in the mirror.
The source of the bad vibes is usually you.
He even admits that in 15 years, he's only witnessed about 3 actual attacks, and they were all verified by others. It's a huge reality check against that victim mindset.
It's about taking responsibility. No one is out to get you except your own shadow.
Which leads to the final error he mentions, Gnostic exhaustion.
The burnout.
Yeah, when you overdo the rituals or don't ground yourself after a heavy session, he says even a good mage can crash. He says when you feel that total exhaustion, you have to stop, switch gears, and just rest.
Listen to the body, not the ego.
Exactly. The software needs a reboot sometimes. Okay, we're moving into a really beautiful section here. Hine is starting to define what it actually means to live the practice.
Because he's making it clear, and I love this, that you don't need to be a believer in all the spooky stuff. He says things like chakras, karma, or even an astral plane. Those are optional. They can depend on your personal preference.
Right. It's not about signing a creed. You could use science fiction metaphors if that works for you. But his real point is that magic shouldn't be some closed-off activity you do behind locked doors or with eyes squeezed shut during a ritual. He says magic is an attitude toward how you move through the world and everything in it.
Basically, stop treating life like something you have to endure and start seeing it as part of the work. And then he drops this massive question. What makes a mage good?
Like, forget the black robes and the weird terminology meant only for the initiated. He basically mocks the whole idea of looking important just by using words no one else understands.
Yeah, because being a good mage from a chaos magic perspective is much more practical. He defines it as someone who achieves success and adapts easily to any conditions across almost every area of life.
That brings us to these 5 core qualities of chaos. He calls them universal. They aren't just for when you're holding a wand, they are for your everyday existence. They are confidence, honor, attentiveness, organization, and sensitivity.
Let's look at that first one, though, because his definition of confidence is wild. It isn't about being some loud-mouthed alpha type.
No. I was waiting for him to say that. He says confidence is specifically the art of relaxing in the immediate present, in the moment, here and now.
See? This ties back perfectly to what we were saying earlier about how anxiety comes from projecting into the future or clinging to the past. If you can't relax now, you aren't confident. You're just, well, stressed.
Exactly. And he points out this trap. People without true confidence avoid anything new that doesn't fit their usual patterns. They fear the unknown consequences. But then there's the flip side. You have the overly confident person who fails constantly because they only see a future where they've already won, completely ignoring the reality of what's happening right in front of them.
So it's not about ego. It's about presence.
Precisely. And check this part out. He mentions how even experts get nervous when things move into uncharted territory. Magic, by its very definition, involves moving through unmapped areas. When we hit something unfamiliar, our instinctual reflex tells us making mistakes is bad. It's hardwired. Making an error feels like destroying our own self-image or social status.
That's such a heavy weight to carry around. No wonder everyone stays stuck in their little bubbles.
And Hine says this exact pressure is why gurus and rigid belief systems are so powerful. People use these prepackaged certainties as insurance because they're too terrified to take that step into real uncertainty. They want a system that guarantees safety.
But here's my favorite bit. He points out how people claim magic works when it does work, but the second life gets messy or hits a black streak. Suddenly, it's all karma. Moon phases, psychic attacks again. They only believe in a power when it suits them.
Ouch. Too true. We love picking and choosing reality based on convenience.
So if you can embrace the chaos, the nonlinearity of the world, you find actual confidence. If you stop viewing new situations as difficult and start seeing them merely as unfamiliar, then every strange moment becomes an awakening instead of a threat.
I love that reframe. Curiosity over fear. It turns everything from a potential disaster into something worth paying attention to. You move your focus away from the demons of your ego and back onto the world itself.
And he adds one more thing about being able to project this. This energy, like if you are truly relaxed and confident, you become an anchor for everyone else in a group setting. Your stability helps others relax too.
Which brings us right back to his point about effectiveness. True results come when we cool down that desperate thirst for results. Because that thirst is actually just another form of insecurity or fear that we might forget our role or fail at what we're doing.
God, my brain is actually vibrating from all this heavy stuff. Let's grab a coffee and reset for a second.
Agreed. I need to move my body anyway. Let's take 5. Okay, we're back. Okay, so we are diving right into the heart of the how-to today. We're looking at Phil Hine's condensed chaos, and the angle we're sticking to is how do you actually use these psychological hacks to navigate a world that feels like it's falling apart?
Or how to use belief, like a software update so you don't crash when the real-world glitches start happening.
Exactly. And look, he starts this section with something so practical, it almost sounds like sports psychology. He's talking about mental rehearsals. He says when people mentally play through their reactions to tough situations, they stay way calmer when the actual crisis hits.
It's basically simulation training.
Right. And he ties this directly into what we've been discussing about confidence. He says the confidence of a mage is the ability to relax when faced with an unfamiliar or disturbing situation. It's not about being fearless. It's about being relaxed enough to see the unknown as exciting rather than a threat.
Yeah, well, some people take exciting a bit too far.
True. But look at his warning here. He says if you're performing these big, dramatic rituals all alone, feeling super powerful, but then you get all nervous or embarrassed in everyday life, then you've totally missed the point of chaos magic.
Because it's fake. If your magic only works in a vacuum, it's just a hobby, not a tool for reality.
Exactly. And he calls the byproduct of this confidence neophily.
Neophily? Like loving new things?
Yeah. He says a truly confident person doesn't feel the need to defend their beliefs or their ideology. They're just open. They don't have to recruit people to their cult because they aren't insecure about their own truth.
Which is a direct shot at all those fundamentalist types who spend all their energy trying to convert everyone.
He says that fanaticism is just what happens when you lose your confidence and lose your safe surroundings. It's a defense mechanism.
Speaking of defense mechanisms, he moves into this heavy topic, honor, and he does it in such a non-traditional way. He says, forget those sacred books with ethics that everyone breaks anyway. Instead, he suggests, it is much more useful to develop your own rules.
Wait, is he saying we should just make up our own morality?
He's saying a personal code of honor actually increases your power as a mage. It's not about being a good person in the Sunday school sense. It's about being reliable. He says if you have a reputation for being noble, people trust you, and that trust actually makes you a more effective, functional mage in the real world.
That makes sense. If you can't even keep a promise to a friend, why would anyone believe you can direct cosmic forces?
Precisely. He gets really blunt here. Your word is your debt. He says your reputation can take years to build, but it can burst in a single evening. He's basically saying if you say you'll do it, do it. If you can't, tell them ahead of time.
It's so grounded. It's almost like he's talking about professional ethics in a high-stakes job.
Because it is a high-stakes job. If you're playing with reality, you can't be a flake.
But then he shifts gears into something that really connects to what we talk about on the show Attention. He says life is much more complex and subtle than we admit. We have to be careful not to let anything dull our attention to people.
Because if you're too stuck in your own head or too stuck in your plan, you miss the feedback.
Yes, he uses this great example as trying to sell something. If you're so focused on your pitch that you aren't watching the other person's face or their posture or their tone, you've already failed. You've decided how the conversation ends before it even happens.
We've all been there. I'm talking, so you must be listening.
Right. And then he brings in this beautiful concept of intuition. He says intuition isn't this spooky sixth sense thing. He says intuition is a more advanced form of attentiveness. It's just processing sensory cues without needing to think about them logically.
He's demystifying it. He's saying it's just high-speed pattern recognition.
Exactly. He shares the story about working in a psychiatric ward. He says he could diagnose patients instantly, even without their files, just by observing. He wasn't using magic. He was just hearing subtle sensory cues and processing them into a whole picture gestalt without needing to walk through a logical checklist.
That's actually a bit chilling.
It's powerful. He says the same thing applies to magic. You have to be attentive to the world, but also to your own internal noise, your cravings, your habits, your inner dialogues.
So, it's about more than looking outward. It's about being a clean mirror.
And then, to wrap this section up, he drops this one-liner that I think defines the whole hackable mind approach. He says, magic is the organization of imagination.
I love that. It's wild dreaming, but structured, intentional, and disciplined.
It's the difference between a storm and a water wheel. One is just chaos. The other uses the chaos to actually do something. Okay, so we're moving into the meat of the system now. Hine is addressing the elephant in the room, the word chaos itself. He knows people hear that and think disorder, like a messy bedroom or a broken engine.
Yeah, the no rules, no structure, just vibes crowd.
Exactly. He says people criticize chaos magic because they think we're advocating for a systemless approach, but he clarifies that chaos doesn't mean lack of organization. He says, chaos means you are training for readiness for action.
It's like being a martial artist. You aren't just flailing around, you're organized so that when the moment hits, you can react without thinking.
Right. And he links this back to that code of hyper honor we just talked about. He says if you can organize yourself, if you can be competent and reliable, people perceive you as effective. And then he calls it a feedback loop.
A feedback loop?
Yeah. He says if you can organize yourself before a task, you find it easier to relax during the task. And if you're relaxed, you're more confident in the outcome. It's all connected.
So, less spontaneous magic and more properly prepared psychological toolkit.
Exactly. But then he pivots to this beautiful, almost spiritual idea of striving for perfection. He says being a mage isn't a state of being. You don't just arrive at being a mage and then sit on a throne. It's a dynamic process.
There's no finish line.
None. He says the person is called a master when they achieve perfection in many things. And he even drops a quote from Robert Anton Wilson. Here he says, specialization is for insects.
I love that. Don't just be a specialist in one little niche.
Right? A powerful mage needs to be interested in everything. You can't just be a ritual expert. You need breadth. But, and here's the catch he warns, that it's not enough to just have knowledge. It's about how you apply it.
Knowledge without application is just trivia. It's useless.
And then he gets into sensitivity. This part really hit me. He says sensitivity isn't the same as being fragile or vulnerable. He's not talking about being a glass vase that breaks at the slightest touch.
Because that kind of sensitivity just makes you retreat into yourself. It's a cage.
Exactly. He defines it as a range of abilities, insight, discretion, empathy, even the art of listening. He says true sensitivity is being able to feel the needs and emotions of others.
But he also says it's about the me versus others boundary. It's a self-centered trap. Do they like me? Am I being cool? Meanwhile, the other person is literally dying for you to shut up. He
says that if you are truly confident and relaxed, it's easier to notice how different other people are from you. You don't feel threatened by their otherness.
And then he drops a real heavy truth bomb. He says the most practical way to develop this sensitivity is to cultivate a sense of danger.
Wait, what? That sounds almost terrifying.
It's not about being paranoid. It's about listening to that internal warning you usually ignore because you can't explain it logically. He tells this story about a friend who had an unexplainable feeling that something was wrong on a bus, so they stayed on past their stop, and later found out there had been a massive car crash right at their intended stop.
Oh my God, that's literally life-saving.
He's saying, don't dismiss the gut feeling just because your logical brain can't find a reason for it yet. That feeling of danger is just your brain processing subtle cues before your conscious mind catches up.
So it's like an early warning system.
It leads right into the core of his training. He starts talking about the 4 arts, the DRVT formula.
Discipline, relaxation, vision weight. Is it vision?
Attention. Discipline, relaxation, attention, and transformation.
And he starts with the most boring, most difficult one, discipline. He says, if you can't sit still and be silent, you'll never succeed at any magical technique.
The boring part of the training.
But he explains why it's important. He says these trivial exercises, like just sitting there, are how you test the boundaries of your reality. You're challenging your own urge to resist change. Use widening the cracks in the facade of your perceived reality.
You're basically stress testing your own mind to see where it breaks.
Precisely. And he says the biggest enemy to all of this, the thing that ruins the whole process, is inertia. That little voice that whispers, stay in bed, it's easier.
The magical villain, the enemy of all progress.
Okay, let's get back to this DRVT thing. Because Hine is about to drop a massive truth bomb about discipline. He says, it is better to do what we can today than to leave it for tomorrow. But then, and this is the kicker, he says too much discipline actually throws us backward.
Back to the inertia?
Exactly. He says if your goals are unrealistic, your discipline becomes a straitjacket. He literally says, discipline requires relaxation if we want to use it correctly.
So you can't just white-knuckle your way to enlightenment. That's a recipe for burnout.
Right. He says you have to stop thinking about it and completely dissolve into it. And then he brings it all together. If you have discipline, relaxation, and attention, you get transformation. That's the T in the formula.
It's like a chemical reaction. You mix the 3, and suddenly you're not the same person.
But he adds this warning: we can practice these things in a ritual space with candles and incense and feel like masters. But if we stay there, we're just hobbyists. The real focus is taking those techniques and expanding our life space until magic isn't an activity, but a set of principles for how we interact with the whole world.
From the altar to the supermarket aisle. I like that.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm so sorry, guys, it's my yoga instructor. She only calls when the studio is literally on fire.
Well, check if it's a spontaneous combustion, because we're in the middle of a revolution.
Hey, no, it's fine. I'll be there in 10. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, my brain was temporarily hijacked.
See? A perfect example of a neurological storm disrupting your focus.
Very meta. Anyway, where were we? Oh, right, the training of thaumaturgy. He starts with relaxation. And he says something so profound: real magic begins with relaxation. Because the enough act of relaxation implies a readiness to introduce change into your reality.
That's a heavy way to frame a deep breath.
It is. He says we spend so much time living in our heads, treating the body like just a carrier for our consciousness. He says modern magic has become too cerebral and abstract. Relaxation is the weight that pulls us back down into the physical.
It grounds the abstraction.
And he gets really practical about stress. He says when we hit a stressor, we trigger the fight or flight reflex lever, releases glucose, heart races, digestion shuts down. And if we can't discharge that energy, we get chronic issues: muscle tension, headaches.
The body keeps the score.
Exactly. And he points out a huge mistake we make: the mismatch between the possible and the desired. We set these massive, unrealistic expectations. We fail, our self-esteem drops, and our thaumaturgical consciousness enters a state of total stress.
It's a feedback loop of failure. And then the stress doubles because you're now stressed about being stressed.
It's a closed loop. But in here is the hack. He says we can break it with a 3-part approach to relaxation. 1. Physical breathwork. Just deep, easy breathing to signal the muscles to let go.
2. Cognitive. Changing the thoughts.
Right. He actually mentions positive thinking here. He says we shouldn't dismiss it, because we often wind ourselves up by pre-playing every worst-case scenario. We do mental rehearsals of disaster instead of mental rehearsals of success.
Yeah, because predicting the apocalypse is much more dramatic than predicting a good day.
Exactly. He says if you can't change the situation, at least give it a realistic assessment and choose a tactic. And then the third part, behavioral, learning to recognize unnecessary tension and simply letting it go.
He's basically teaching us how to reprogram our autonomic nervous system. That sounds like a very strange way to start a conversation at a party.
Hey, focus on your kneecaps, let's get magical. But he says it works because it expands your awareness. He even says you can use your posture. He says, practice different ways of walking: confident, frivolous, wild, sexual.
Well, I've definitely practiced the wild one.
He says you should look at the language of your body and identify the poses that trigger negative emotions, and then actively try to adopt the body language of the person you want to become.
So, you're literally wearing a new identity like a piece of clothing.
Exactly. You're hacking the hardware to update the software. Speaking of hardware updates, the Lebanese food has officially arrived.
Perfect. I'm starving. Let's take a quick pit stop for some pita and hummus.
Okay, we're back. Okay, we are back, and I am literally vibrating right now. We're picking up midstream in condensed chaos, and I feel like we're moving from the theory of what is magic into the actual gritty how-to of rewiring your brain.
Or just how to stop being a zombie during your morning commute.
Exactly. Look at this first part. He's talking about this physical technique, and he says, and I love this, don't focus on them specifically. Just imagine you're sliding in a wave of warmth along a part of your body. He even tells you to forget everything you've read about chakras and just listen to your sensations.
Finally, a spell that doesn't require a PhD in Sanskrit.
Right? It's so much more visceral. But then he pivots to this incredible wife hack under the heading, do it simpler. He's basically saying, observe any simple action dressing, picking something up, and find the absolute easiest way to do it.
That sounds suspiciously like laziness.
No, it's not laziness, Jane. He says it makes you aware of every action instead of doing things on autopilot. Like when you touch an object, feel it in your fingertips. Don't use more energy than necessary. It's about efficiency, not slacker off.
Actually, I see where he's going. It's like reducing the friction between your will and the material world. If you're constantly grinding through tasks with unnecessary tension, you're just creating more noise in your own system.
Precisely. And he links it to this deeper point about how we use boredom as an escape. We treat mundane tasks as obstacles because we're mentally trying to jump into a more interesting future.
Yeah, I do that. I'm already thinking about my next meditation while I'm still washing the dishes.
But he challenges that. He says, how do we open a door? How do we take a cup? He wants us to find the magic in the micro details. It's like he's saying, if you can't find the presence in a cup of tea, you'll never find it in a ritual.
Which ties back to that whole deconditioning thing we talked about earlier. Breaking the habit of being elsewhere.
And then, okay, this is the heavy stuff he moves into, moving in time. He makes this wild claim that time isn't an objective dimension at all. He says it's a byproduct of consciousness.
Go on.
He says we move forward and backward on an axis of memory and fantasy. Memory is the past, fantasy is the future. And while he says staying in the here and now is key, he says we can actually use the past.
How?
He talks about assembling a gestalt of sensory memories. Like if you remember an ex, don't just think about the idea of them. Recreate the moment you looked into their eyes. Recreate the feeling of their voice, the warmth, the heartbeat. He says you can actually resurrect an emotion in your body by reconstructing the sensory pieces. And then, get this, you can use that liberated emotion for magic, stripped of the original person or the baggage.
Wait, so you're literally harvesting the raw energy of a memory after you've deleted the person part? That is genuinely terrifying. And brilliant.
Right? It's like psychological recycling. But he warns that if you don't control this, you end up in a loop of depression, where your fantasies just become a selective feedback loop for your worst fears. You're essentially manifesting your own nightmare by rehearsing it.
A self-fulfilling prophecy powered by your own imagination. Classic.
But the greatness of magic, he says, is that it folds the future into the immediate present. It collapses at distance. A magician grabs reality and lives in the here and now, because the future is just an expression of their will.
It's a massive shift in agency. You aren't waiting for the age of Aquarius to arrive, you're forcing it into existence through how you handle the present.
Exactly. And he even gives us a practical tip for our journals. He suggests 4 columns: physical details, memories triggered, quotes you like, and even fragments of overheard conversations.
So, no more just writing. Had a weird dream and calling it a day?
No, he wants the non-linear connections that we usually censor. He wants the chaos in the data. He wants you to see how a random snippet of an ad on the radio might link to a memory from 10 years ago.
It's all about thickening the web of perception.
Yes, and he ends this section with this beautiful idea of sensory enrichment. He wants us to train our senses like muscles. Focus on color, smell, sound, even taste. He even suggests eating a slice of lemon and then trying to recall that exact sensation days later.
A bit more intense than my usual afternoon snack.
But it's all leading to this building to gestalts. The idea that we don't just see a tree or feel water, but we assemble a whole sensory experience. The sight, the temperature, the sound of the waves to create a reality so thick you can actually inhabit it. That's the core of pathworking.
Creating your own myth, one sense at a time. I think I need to go find some lemon.
Okay, so we just finished talking about building those heavy sensory gestalts, the idea of making a memory so thick you can live in it. And now, Hine takes that and turns it into a literal training manual for what he calls pathworking.
Which is basically guided imagery for people who don't want to be bored.
Exactly, but he breaks it down into 3 levels. First, there's the structured kind. He says these are stories that are carefully worked out with all these sensory and emotional cues, and you just follow them like a script.
Like an audiobook for the astral plane.
Right, and he says it's actually super useful when you're trying out a brand new belief system. You don't have to invent the world, you just ride the wave of the story. But then it gets more intense. He talks about semi-structured work.
Let me guess. Less script, more improv?
Exactly. He says you get an introduction like you're in a mysterious castle and there's a key keeper you need to find. And then, boom, you're on your own. You have to use your own creativity to fill in the gaps.
That's where the real work happens. That's where you actually have to use the tools we were talking about earlier, the attention, the sensory enrichment.
And the third level is just pure chaos. Unstructured pathworking. He says you can just use a single symbol, a tarot card, a rune, a hexagram as a portal to a mythic world. No story, just a doorway.
Just a door into the unknown. No map, no flashlight, just stepping through.
But here's the why, Jane. This is the part that gave me chills. He says we use pathworking to experience things that trigger massive emotional and cognitive reactions. He literally says you can do a pathwork where you experience your own death, your funeral, the whole process of decay.
Oh, wow, that is heavy.
But he says the point isn't to be morbid. It's to use that experience to get rid of the fear of it, to face that biological reality so it loses its power to haunt you. It's the deconditioning of the ego's greatest fear.
Okay, so we're dying in our heads to live better in reality. Got it. But what about the physical stuff? I saw a heading here about kinesthetic memory.
This is my favorite part. It's so weirdly physical. He says if you become aware of how your muscles move, how your joints resist the air, you can start to feel your astral body or your double.
Wait, what? He's telling you to move your arm in slow motion to find your astral self?
Yes. He literally says, slowly raise your left arm, feeling the changes in your muscles. Notice how the air resists the movement of your joints. And then, and this is the hack, you do it physically, and then you try to mentally raise your right arm and recreate those exact sensations.
So you're essentially training your brain to trigger a physical sensation without the physical input. That's straight up neurological reprogramming.
It is. He says if you keep doing this, you'll eventually be able to move freely in a kinesthetic body. You could use this double to rehearse difficult situations, or even for shapeshifting.
I can see the TikTok trend now. How to astral project your way out of an awkward conversation.
But it's more than just for play. He says you use this to build an astral temple. And he's so postmodern about it. He says it doesn't have to be some ancient, dusty Greek temple. It could be a cyberspace zone, a space station, or even a skyscraper.
I like that. No need to learn ancient architecture. Just use the symbols that actually mean something to you.
Right. But then, he takes us even further out. He introduces the Star Hall.
Okay, sounds like we're leaving the apartment now.
We are. He describes it as a sphere of crystal floating in open space. You enter by visualizing a chaos star that turns into a vortex pulling you in. And inside, there's this crystal column, a control panel.
A control panel? This sounds less like magic and more like a cockpit.
Is a cockpit. He says if you touch this column, the room lights up with purple light, and control over events passes entirely into your hands. You can use it to travel the multiverse, to pull differentiating spheres, or energy projectors out of the walls. He even mentions collectors that gather radiation from black holes.
It's literally a cosmic workstation. This is the cybernetic model we talked about earlier, using the mind to manipulate the software of reality.
Exactly. But all of this, the temples, the halls, the shifting bodies, it all relies on one thing: trance. And he wants to clear up the misconception that trance is just being a passive, senseless person, like someone under hypnosis.
Yeah, the zombie trope.
He says real magic is about intentional alteration of perception. You can use excitation, things like dancing, drumming, or even hyperventilation to reach a trance ecstasy, where your ego dissolves and you can imprint beliefs into your deep mind.
Or you use inhibition, sensory deprivation, fasting or slow breathing to shut down the internal dialogue and break the linear sense of time.
It's about breaking that need our culture has to always be listening to the voice of reason, constantly commenting on everything. He says that by withdrawing from your usual environment and practicing isolation, your self becomes more flexible.
Because the personality we wear is really just a set of boundaries. It defines what is possible and impossible for us.
And when you break those boundaries through trance, you can achieve things that seem impossible in your everyday life. He ends this section with this incredible image from Lucian, describing a priestess of Delphi, literally flinging herself around the temple, carrying the god on her.
Man, we're moving way past light magic now. We're talking about total structural breakdown.
It's magic, Jane. It's an invitation to stop being a passenger in your own head. Oh, wow, okay. We definitely need to breathe for a second before my brain melts.
Wait, is that the delivery driver at the door? Perfect timing.
Okay, we're back. Okay, we are back. We're leaning into the thick of it now.
And it's getting messy.
Oh, so messy. I was just reading the opening image. It's visceral. He's describing his priestess, hair flying, flower crowns falling to the floor, literally foaming at the mouth, making these dreadful wails in a cave. It's total chaos.
Sounds like my Tuesday nights at the drum circle, honestly. But he's setting the stage for something much heavier than just a wild dance. He's talking about possession.
Right, and he's being so honest about it. He says the experience of trance isn't always, well, pleasant, especially when it's possession. He describes that terrifying sensation of your limbs moving, but it's not your voice speaking.
Yeah, that's the loss of agency part that freaks everyone out. He knows that Westerners avoid this at all costs, even if they know it's a good spirit. And he mentions how, historically, mages used drugs or exhaustion just to close the personality, basically to mute the ego so the spirit could take the wheel.
It's like a forced software override. But then he pivots. He asks the big question, why do this? Why go through the terror of losing yourself?
He gives a list, and it's more than to see ghosts.
No, it's practical. Number 1, knowledge. Things you can't get anywhere else. Like asking a deceased Aunt Frida how things are on the other side.
I'd ask her where she hid the good silver, but then he gets into the expanding abilities bit. This part actually gave me chills. He tells this story about a client with a chronic throat issue. He goes into a trance and sees this toad-like entity literally swelling up in her throat.
That is so gnarly.
It is, and he says, I knew it wouldn't leave voluntarily. So, what does he do? He uses the cybernetic logic we talked about earlier. He finds a bigger, more toad-like spirit to possess himself, just to scare the original one out.
It's extreme diplomacy. You bring a bigger bully to the negotiation. I love that. It's so much more hackable than just praying for it to go away.
It fits his whole thesis. But then he moves to the third reason, and this is where he gets really critical of our modern world. He talks about collective ecstasy, the mage acting as a navigator for the tribe's myths.
And he says we've lost that. He compares a Tamang shaman, who is deeply embedded in their community's living myth, to a modern Briton who lives in this electronic dominion of video screens.
It's so true. He says the repository of myth is so fragmented now that we've handed the keys over to professional psychiatrists and philosophers, or cut off from the direct oral transmission.
But he offers a way out. He says direct, physical experience gives much more than reading books in a locked room. Which honestly is why I love our jams with Paco. It's that kinetic, living energy.
Exactly. He's saying don't just study the map, go walk the terrain. He even mentions using trance for panoramic vision, like a creative spark. He says he uses it to break through writer's block, where ideas fly toward him like iron filings to a magnet.
That sounds so much more beautiful than the foaming priestess imagery, but then he hits us with the demonstration part.
Oh, the showing off part.
He says you can build an aura by, I don't know, reciting the entire works of Aleister Crowley, which he calls a great feat, but then he warns that spirits often test you. They want to see if you can handle extreme psychological tension.
They want to see if you'll crack. He even says some spirits, especially those related to psychotropic substances, will actively try to drive you insane just to see if you have the magical power to hold your center.
That's intense, but he brings it back to a very grounded practice. He says you can't be a mage in total isolation. You have to learn from everyone everywhere, and he gives the specific technique for entering threshold perception.
The mirror technique.
Yes, staring into a mirror until it goes dark and you slip into it. But he warns that your ego will fight you. Your ego needs to feel time passing to maintain its unchutney self.
It's an identity hack. You have to break the linear perception of time to get to the threshold.
Which leads us directly into his guide on scrying. He's talking about using reflective surfaces, black mirrors, or bowls of dark liquid.
And he's very practical here. No intense, straining concentration. Just letting the images float in like a dream. He even gives setup tips, dim light, candles because electric lights are too harsh, and using scents to help you relax.
It's all about creating that software environment where the subconscious can finally start rendering the images.
It's not about forcing the vision. It's about making the room quiet enough to hear it.
It's amazing how much he links these physical tools, the mirrors, the crystals, to much deeper psychic stuff. He says that just sitting there, relaxing and watching images float by, is the key to unlocking things like psychometry or even reading auras.
It's about building that muscle. He's very insistent on the regular practice part. You can't just stare at a crystal once and expect to start seeing the future.
Right, it's a training regimen. And he pulls from such a huge global lineage here, indigenous cultures of the Americas, Africa, even ancient Greece. It's an ancient human technology.
And he's talking about more than seeing the future either. He says these surfaces can be used to communicate with ancestral spirits. And this is the part that always gets me. He says sometimes the images and entities literally leave the mirror and merge with the room around you.
That sounds unsettling. Like the boundary between the tool and the world just dissolves?
Exactly. The software is leaking into the hardware. But if mirrors are about looking in, he moves to something even more expansive, dream work.
Oh, I love this part. He calls it dynamic dreaming. He says dreaming is how you effectively detach from linear consciousness.
Because in a dream, time and distance just stop existing. You can be in the past, the future, or a totally different now.
And he's so non-judgmental about it. He says we get upset when we see people we know in dreams, thinking it's a personal reflection, but in the dream state, that's not how it works.
Yeah, your brain is trying to logic its way through a non-logical space. It's like trying to use a calculator to write poetry.
True. But he gives such a beautiful example of how to use this. He mentions a friend of his, a perfumer, who dreams of unique scents. She can wake up, analyze the scent, and actually create it.
That is some high-level information retrieval. It's like, I had a weird dream, but actually, I just downloaded a new formula.
And then he brings it back to the heavy hitters. He mentions Austin Osman Spira, again, the guy we talked about at the very beginning, saying he'd sometimes wake up standing in front of a finished painting he'd painted while dreaming.
That's a hack, isn't it? Using the dream state as a creative workstation. But he doesn't leave it to chance. He says you have to be an active participant. You need a dream journal.
To find the patterns, to see where the dream symbols intersect with your actual waking life.
Right. And here's a wild claim. He says it's surprisingly easy to program your dreams based on your own expectations. He mentions how Freud's followers see Freudian dreams and Jungian see Jungian ones.
Because your belief system is literally shaping the content.
He literally suggests you can place an order for a dream. You can decide, I want to see a specific person, or I want to see a specific object.
You just use a declaration of intent right before sleep. I will, the will to see my father.
And the trick isn't forcing it. It's the relaxation part. You plant the seed, then you let go.
It reminds me of how I try to set my intention during yoga. You don't clench the intention, you just let it permeate the practice.
Well, don't get too zen yet, because he takes it a step further into dream telepathy. He says you can actually use scent to create a telepathic channel between two people.
Wait, what? How does a perfume act as a telephone line?
He says if two people use the same specific scent, and you use that scent before sleep to focus on that person, you might actually wake them up in a dream.
No way.
He claims he's actually used this technique with a partner to telepathically wake each other up at a specific time in the middle of the night, using scent as a telepathic alarm clock.
That is incredibly specific and slightly terrifying.
It's pure chaos magic, using any tool, even a bottle of perfume, to bypass the ego and bridge the gap between minds.
It makes the whole idea of self feel so much more fluid. Like we're not these solid, isolated units, but more like nodes in a network.
A network that's constantly being rerouted. And he wraps this up by talking about lucid dreaming, actually stepping onto the stage and changing the script instead of just watching the movie.
Using meta-programming to trigger awareness, like telling yourself, whenever I see a yellow ball floating toward me, I'll know I'm dreaming.
It's all about creating that trigger to snap the ego out of its autopilot mode. It's the way to take the wheel.
We need a minute. My brain is officially fried from all this. Telepathic perfume talk.
Honestly, same. And that smell in the hallway, please tell me that's not just someone's incense and it's actually our food.
It definitely smells like Za'atar to me. The Moroccan place is here.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, we are back. And if you've been following us, you know we've been talking about the idea of hacking your own reality.
We're just reprogramming the software before the hardware crashes.
Exactly. And today we're diving straight into the how-to manual. We're looking at Phil Hine's condensed chaos, and he's laying out the actual technical steps for sigil magic. He breaks it down into 6 specific stages.
And it isn't some vague wish upon a star nonsense. He starts with the declaration of an intention. He says it has to be precise but simple. Vague intentions usually cause vague results.
Right, and he gives this hilarious, slightly tragic warning. He mentions a friend who made a sigil for her dream man. She was so specific about his looks, even the car he'd drive, but she totally forgot to include the word intelligence.
Oh no.
Yeah, so she got exactly what she asked for, and the guy was a total airhead who could only talk about himself or his car. She was bored in no time.
Well, that's a classic case of getting exactly what you programmed. It's a lesson in precision. But what I love is how Hine connects this back to what we talked about earlier, that deconditioning process. He says by being careful with these intentions, you're actually stripping away your own stereotypes and biases. It's about cleaning up your own mental clutter.
It's about being an editor for your own soul. But he also warns that magicians aren't just constantly casting spells like they're playing a video game. They have to be extremely selective.
Because if you just spam the manifest button, you're going to create some serious unintended side effects. Speaking of which, he moves into divination techniques. He says you can use tarot, runes, whatever, but use them to find the hidden motives behind your desires.
And he uses this great, very relatable example. His computer broke right before he was writing this book. He was in full-on user panic, just wanting a new expensive machine. He even tried to get a bank loan.
The classic, I need it now impulse.
Exactly. He was so stressed, so focused on the wanting that he didn't see the alternative. So he pulled the tarot. And the cards basically told him, hey, don't get a loan. It'll be a disaster. Just fix the old one. And he felt this massive relief.
That's the point. The divination isn't there to give you a yes or no. It's there to act like an old, trusted friend who tells you the truth even when it hurts. If you ignore the reading, you're just lying to yourself. And then he drops this tool that is pure business strategy, the SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunity, threat.
Wait, like a corporate boardroom meeting for magic?
Exactly. He says before you do a magical act, look at your position. Do you have the info, the support, or are enough walking into a trap? He admits that for his computer, the threats of alone far outweighed the strengths, so he changed his strategy. He made a sigil specifically asking for help from people, and it worked.
That's such a shift. Instead of give me money, it's show me the path of least resistance. It's much more clever.
It's more hacky, but he also warns about opening the path too wide. He tells the story about Brother Conrad.
Oh, I remember this one. The unintended consequences part.
Yeah, Conrad wanted more money. The universe delivered, but it came via sudden deaths of relatives and work injuries. The universe has a very dark sense of humor. Hine is saying, if you don't look at the other ways the intention could manifest like a promotion or lottery win, the multiverse might just take the most chaotic route available.
Which brings us to the actual construction. Once you have the intention, you have to bind it to a symbolic carrier. He talks about monograms taking the letters, stripping them down into a glyph or mantras, where you turn the phrase into a chant. He even mentions smells or gestures.
It's all about creating that code that the subconscious can process without the ego getting in the way.
And finally, the launch. You need intense gnosis or detached emptiness. You need that peak state, whether it's through dance or music, to actually imprint the sigil onto reality.
The software update moment. You've written the code, you've tested it with SWOT analysis, and now you hit install.
Okay, so we built the sigil, we've bound it to a symbol, and now we reached the launch. And Jane, I don't think you're prepared for how unhinged this gets.
Oh please, I've heard it all. Is he going enough to tell me to sacrifice a goat?
No, worse. He says the launch is just releasing the sigil into a vacuum at the peak of Gnosis, and he defines Gnosis as intense meditation, but also sensory deprivation or even sexual climax.
Well, that's certainly a peak state.
But wait, it gets more random. He says you can launch it when you're about to sneeze or the moment you feel the complete bliss of a relieved bladder after a long time.
Okay, that is officially the least majestic ritual I have ever heard. The sorcerer's relief.
Right? But he's being serious. He even says if you're using a partner, you don't even have to tell them what's happening. Just be grateful they're providing the stimulation you need to launch your photonic torpedo into deep space.
Photonic torpedo. I love it. It's so unserious. But there's a method to the madness. He's talking about that state of absence of thought. Like if you're sitting in a boring lecture, doodling sigils while your mind is totally checked out, that's actually a perfect window.
Because you're not trying so hard, you're just there. But then, he hits us with the hardest part of the whole process, the forgetting.
The part where everyone fails.
Exactly. He says forgetting is the most difficult stage. If you're obsessed with the result, you're basically sabotaging the whole thing. He uses this beautiful metaphor. He compares our minds to this wild, overgrown, abandoned garden.
I love a good garden metaphor.
So, you take one intention, one plant, and you nurture it. You prune it, you fertilize it, you make it stand out from the weeds. But the trick is, once you're done, you have to walk away and go watch TV. You have to look at your garden later and not even notice the plant you were just working on.
Because if you start obsessing thinking about how much money you'll have, or what that person from your dream is going to say to you, you're just weaving that intention into the tangle of your other anxieties. You're making it too heavy to fly.
Right. He says you have to trust that the multiverse is like Santa Claus, it's always receiving messages. You just have to stop voting for the bus in the rain.
You know the feeling. You've been standing in the downpour for hours. You're convinced no one is coming, and then bam, a Porsche pulls up, the window rolls down, and it's a guy in a human anteater costume asking if you need a ride.
Exactly. It shows up when you're not looking.
It's actually a great way to track if you're doing it right. He suggests a weirdly practical way to keep a journal, write down your experiments so clearly that when you read them later, you can't immediately remember what you were wishing for.
Wait, so you're intentionally creating a memory gap?
Yeah, to prevent that ego attachment we were talking about earlier. He even suggests a game. Make one sigil for something totally trivial like, I want to meet a redhead with a small dog, and launch that one first. Use the trivial one as a test run.
That's so much easier to forget. Where's my redhead with the poodle? Oh well, never mind.
Exactly. It trains the muscle of letting go. And he wraps this whole thing up by basically calling out the entire history of magic. He says the Protestant work ethic has poisoned magic, making everyone think it has to be this heavy, serious, exhausting work.
He says magic should be play.
Yeah. He asks, what's the difference between a child playing with a doll and a mage working with a wax figure? The child is much more magical because they actually believe the doll is enough. They aren't overthinking the theory or the ritual mechanics. They're just in the game.
So the hack isn't a complex ritual at all. It's just reclaiming that ability to play, to use the chaos, to use the tools, but to stay light enough to actually enjoy the ride.
To keep the software light so the system doesn't crash.
Okay, so we've gone through the construction, we've hit the launch with all its colorful sensory peaks, and now Hine starts talking about what happens after the magic is out in the wild. He lays out this 4-step cycle: assessment, plan, implementation, and analysis.
The corporate sorcery phase.
Exactly. He says for assessment, you shouldn't just rush in. You need to stop, do nothing. Just look at the situation. He suggests using everything: dreams, divination, even just visualizing different tactics.
Basically, don't just press buttons, check the system requirements first, and then the plan. He says you need to decide exactly what resources you need. And I love that he doesn't limit this to just magical stuff. He says it could be money or physical tools or even just getting help from other people.
It's very practical. It's about logistics. But then he hits the implementation stage and he gets real for a second. He says this is the hardest part because laziness and inertia move in. But, and this is a beautiful point, he says, that inertia is often just a hidden fear of either failure or success.
Yeah, the fear of actually winning. Because if you succeed, your whole reality changes, and that's terrifying to the ego.
Precisely. So you push through the barrier, you get that rush of pleasure, and then you reach the final stage, analysis. And this is where he gets incredibly honest. He says we have to be extremely honest with ourselves when looking back at our magical journals.
Because it's so easy to lie to your own diary.
Oh, it's so easy. He gives this amazing example. He was doing sigil magic to find new sources of pleasure, and then he admits that, deep down, what he actually wanted was new sexual relationships.
Spoken like a true practitioner.
Right. But then a friend gave him a new computer game, and he spent hours playing it and feeling great. So he told himself, hey, the sigil worked. I found pleasure.
But if he had been honest, if he had specified, I want to hook up with someone, and all he got was a high score in Minecraft, he'd have to admit the magic failed.
He was essentially reframing his failure as a success to protect his ego. He calls this out as something humans do constantly. We blame bad karma or the will of the gods or unfortunate coincidences when a spell fails, instead of admitting we were just being vague or dishonest.
It's a psychological trick. It's much easier to say, the stars were misaligned, than to say, I didn't actually want this to work. I just like the idea of it.
It's heavy stuff. But then he lightens the whole mood by pivoting to the magician's toys.
Finally, we're getting to the fun stuff.
He literally starts with Play-Doh.
Play-Doh? Of course.
Now listen, he says it has colossal possibilities. You take your intention, roll the Play-Doh into strips, and shape the letters of your wish. You meditate on it, then smash it all back into a ball. He even suggests using hyperventilation or glossolalia speaking in tongues while you need it. And then, at the peak of Gnosis, you split the ball in two. One half is you, the other is your desire, and you smash them back together.
That is some high-level sensory integration right there. And he even suggests adding bits of your self-hair, nails. A little biological seasoning for the dough.
A bit visceral, but hey, it's chaos magic. And he moves on to candles, which is classic, but he says sex by candlelight adds magical power.
Well, can't argue with that logic.
And then he gets into even weirder territory, string and twine, not magic. He mentions weaving complex patterns or even using braided hair, maybe even from deceased relatives, to infuse magic into your career prospects.
Now that gives me the chills. That's some heavy-duty shamanic stuff.
But it's all part of the same spectrum. He talks about gifts, things you find or are given that just feel special. You don't even need to perform a ritual. You just put them in your magical box because they have an energy you can't explain.
Like the found objects he mentions. He tells the story about finding an old telephone handset. He just carried it around in his pocket for months, playing with it, pretending to talk into it to prank people.
And then
And then every time he used the phone to pretend to talk to a specific woman, she would actually show up at the party. The prank became a way to manifest her presence.
That is such a perfect example of the cybernetic model we talked about earlier, using a mundane, almost ridiculous behavior to create a microscopic fluctuation in reality.
He even touches on crystals, but he mocks the New Agers a bit. He says they think crystals can help you talk to dolphins or save Atlantis, but he points out the much cooler, more practical use, using them for scrying or as traps for spirits.
It's all about the use case. He even mentions using dominoes or dice for divination, or even just a lollipop stick. You can carve runes into a candy stick and carry it around as a totally discreet talisman.
It's stealth magic. No one suspects the guy with the enchanted lollipop.
Exactly. It all comes back to what we said at the start: the tools don't matter as much as the intent and the play. Whether it's a high-end crystal or a piece of colorful chalk, the magic is in how you use it to rewrite your own software.
Just keep the software light, so the system doesn't crash.
My brain is actually buzzing after that one. Let's take 5 and grab some water.
Please, I need to go contemplate my own software for a second.
Okay, we're back. Okay, I am officially obsessed with the idea of a balloon ritual. It's so bouncy.
It's literally just popping a balloon and calling it a climax. If that's not the most chaotic way to handle a crisis, I don't know what is.
But wait, look at what Hine says right here. He's talking about using balloons to project intent, maybe even attaching a sigil to one and letting it go. The moment it pops, that's the culmination.
It's basically a DIY party popper for your subconscious.
Exactly. And he's not stopping at balloons. He says even things people look down on, like tea leaves, can be incredibly useful.
I mean, honestly, I'll take tea leaves over a ritual that requires me to buy a consecrated silver dagger.
See, that's where he gets really fun. He tells this story about a ceramic elf figurine. He literally tried to use a Christmas souvenir to find lost keys in his house.
No way. An elf?
Yeah. He'd ask the elf where the stuff was, find the item, and then this is the best part, he'd go back and thank the elf. Sometimes he'd even leave a silver coin for it. And he says it actually worked. It became a consistent practice.
That is so much more life hack than anything I've ever heard. He's not even trying to summon a demon. He's just bribing a piece of pottery to help with the housework.
But look at the deeper point he's making. He calls this evocation. He says the best way to feed a spirit is to develop a partnership and attribute every success to it. It's about building that psychological momentum.
It's essentially positive reinforcement for your own brain. But then he pivots. He moves from bribing elves to the heavy hitters: the wand, the dagger, the cup, the pentacle, and the lamp.
And he immediately shuts down the expert vibe. He says, I'm not going to go on and on about the symbolism because you don't actually need to know the deep ancient meanings to make them work.
Right. He's stripping the pretension away. He says the wand is just a physical symbol of a willful act, directing energy along a vector. It's the initial impulse to start a project.
In the dagger, he says it's like an extension of your finger. You use it to draw sigils in the air, but its real power is analysis and insight.
So, the dagger is basically your critical thinking skill. If you can't plan or analyze a situation, your dagger is useless. It's all about the mental heavy lifting.
Exactly. And the cup is the receiver. It's where information comes in through wine or scrying or even just dreaming. It's the space where the internal dialogue stops.
And the pentacle is where it all lands. The synthesis, the place where the results actually show up.
But he does this incredible thing where he applies all of this to writing his own book. He says his desire to write is the wand. His use of language to analyze thoughts is the dagger. The computer screen where ideas appear is the cup. And the final printed text, that's the pentacle.
That's brilliant. He's turning the act of publishing into a magical ritual.
It makes it so much less intimidating. It's not about some far-off cosmic energy. It's about how you use the tools you already have in your hands.
It's like he says, success depends more on the player than the equipment, like a game. You can laugh at people who take football way too seriously, but then you turn around and argue about which magical tradition is authentic.
The hypocrisy is real.
Speaking of things that are real, he gets into the heavy stuff. Protection. Everyone wants a protection spell, but he asks, protection from what?
He's so blunt here. He's like, are you just clumsy? Do you need to look where you're walking?
He basically calls out the people who are obsessed with magical attacks. He says 99% of the time, the person claiming they're being attacked is actually the one doing the attacking to themselves.
That's a heavy hit.
Yeah. He says it's usually just a symptom of hypertrophied importance, basically an inflated ego. They're so caught up in their own drama that they invent a cosmic conspiracy.
It's a reality check. He's saying instead of building a magical shield, just develop some vigilance. Ground yourself.
And then he hits the final topic of this section, love magic, the stuff that makes people both respect and fear magicians.
He doesn't go into the spells, but he says the real skill in love magic is just being observant, learning to read nonverbal cues, knowing when to speak and when to be silent.
It's about the art of cooperation. It's about whether or not you actually know how to interact with another human being beyond just finding a partner.
So less lustful, more social intelligence training.
Precisely. Honestly, if you can master that, you've already done more magic than most.
So we were just talking about social intelligence, and he basically doubles down on it. He's saying, look, if you want a one-night stand vibe versus a long-term connection, fine, but don't confuse sex with love.
And he's so right about that. People spend so much energy chasing this ideal love that isn't even what they actually need.
Right. He says, and I love this phrasing, I found it much more effective to work magic for a partner who is needed rather than a partner I want.
Ouch. That's a reality check. There's a massive difference between a passing whim and a fundamental necessity.
It's like he's saying, stop chasing the fantasy and look at your actual gaps. But then he gets spicy. He brings up the innocence of love magic versus the sin of cursing.
He's calling out the hypocrisy. He's like, wait, if you're trying to meddle in someone else's relationship with a wand, how would you feel if someone did that to you?
Exactly. He's warning us that the butterfly effect we talked about earlier applies to drama too. You might get what you want. He even says you could literally make someone strip for you. But if you're he uses a great word, a pustule covered bore with the charisma of a brick, no amount of magic is going to land you a Playboy model.
Charisma of a brick. I'm going to use that next time Seth tries to act all mysterious during a ritual.
Hey, leave him alone. But the point is, he's saying, invest in yourself. Work on your charm, your wealth, your skills. Because even if you did manifest a supermodel, if you haven't changed yourself, you'll probably just get bored of them anyway.
It's all about that deconditioning we mentioned at the start, stripping away the ego's superficial cravings.
Speaking of things that aren't superficial, he moves into healing, and he is, so, done with the New Age bluff.
Oh, I can tell.
He says forget the past life regressions, forget the aura diagnostics, forget the chakra massages. If you want to be a healer, just focus on getting results. Make the client feel better, period.
Finally, some common sense. But he adds this warning though. He says if you become a good healer, people will watch your every move. You have to maintain a professional distance.
Yeah, he brings up that magic of the ego concept again. He says you have to watch out for the urge to become more obsessed with your image as a healer than with the actual person you're helping.
That's a slippery slope. It's easy to start performing healing just to feel important.
It really is. But then, he takes a sharp turn into the dark stuff. Curses.
Here we go. The black magic talk.
He's very non-judgmental about it, which is classic chaos magic. He points out that curses are actually some of the oldest magic in existence, found in almost every tribal or shamanic culture.
Because when you're being physically attacked, when someone hits you with a rifle butt, you don't have time for a peaceful meditation. You need a way to strike back.
Right. He says it's hard to argue ethics or karma with someone who is actively hurting you. But, and this is the hackable mind part, he says, you have to take responsibility. Before you curse someone, ask, is this the only way? Can I handle the fallout? Will I actually get the result?
And he gives this wild example. He asks, is it really a curse if you just make a serial rapist more clumsy so that he eventually gets caught and arrested?
That is such a brilliant way to reframe it. It's not evil, it's just introducing chaos to disrupt a harmful pattern.
It's much more cybernetic than demonic. You're just tweaking the variables to force a different outcome.
Exactly. It's all about the intention. And that leads him into the next big topic, wealth and fame.
The big lures?
He says wealth isn't just about piles of cash, it's about abundance of resources. But he warns that desires are sneaky, like sex. He says we treat sex like a simple stimulus response thing, hormones and heartbeats, but it's actually much more volatile.
Yeah, he mentions how sexual desire can totally flip your identity. A gay man suddenly wanting a woman, or a straight man being startled by his own attraction to a neighbor. It's a direct attack on the ego's certainty.
It's a glitch in the software, and then he ties it to fame. He admits that he's experienced this thought. He's built a hyper reputation.
We know. We see the fame in the magic journals.
Hey, but he says fame is just like wealth. It's something you either have or you're working toward. And he tells this really humble story about how he didn't set out to be a famous occultist. He just wanted to read journals, so he started writing to get free copies.
It started as a way to save money.
Exactly. He just started writing to organize his thoughts, and suddenly, he's a public figure. He even admits he was sometimes annoyed when people gossiped about his private life in those very journals.
It's all part of the imprint. The more you put yourself out there, the more the world starts to reflect that version of you back at you.
And he ends this section by saying that wealth and fame are enchanting forces because they are so primal. They hit us right where we are in our physical material cravings.
It's a test of the practitioner. Can you use these massive, heavy forces without letting them swallow your entire identity?
That's the million-dollar question, literally. You know, I was just thinking about that social intelligence bit, and then I hit this paragraph about wealth. He links it to Jupiter expansion, right? But he immediately drops this heavy caveat. He says, what kind of expansion can you hope for if you are not in harmony with yourself?
Translation: stop trying to buy a Ferrari when your inner life is a dumpster fire.
Exactly. He says before you expand your world, you have enough of a sun quality, which is confidence, but you have to approach confidence as an art. Specifically, the art of relaxing in the here and now.
See, I love that. Most people think confidence is about standing tall and looking tough. But he's saying true confidence is just being able to relax. If you can't relax, you're just projecting tension.
Right. He says relaxation is the secret path to magical success, because when you relax, you let go of the past and stop projecting your desires into the future. You actually see the situation for what it is, not what it should be.
It's that deconditioning we talked about earlier, dropping the shoulds.
But then, and here's where he gets a bit intense. He says even that isn't enough. He says true confidence requires self-love, and self-love means being able to look at the tangled knots of desire inside you.
The tangled knots.
He says the ego uses external desires as a veil to hide things we can't bear to let into our consciousness. And he says these conflicts eventually become their retribution for the magician.
That's a heavy way to put it. Like, if you're using wealth or fame to mask some deep-seated trauma, the universe is eventually going to call your bluff.
Yeah, he even gives this slightly disturbing example. He says someone might sublimate a sexual attraction to young flesh by becoming a Boy Scout leader or a priest.
Oh, wow, that is stark.
It is. He's saying they're just wearing a mask. And he argues that if you can't accept yourself, you'll never accept the independence of others. You'll just be constantly disappointed when people don't act the way they should.
So, the magic of the sun is really just about radical authenticity.
Exactly. And then he pivots again to Mars. He says if the sun is about being, Mars is about, well, the magic of energy, drive, discipline, and coolness. He describes a sniper waiting for the perfect moment to shoot.
Now that is a vibe, no ego, just precision.
and he ties it to planning. He talks about plan A, plan B, and even escape routes. He calls it the magic of thinking, using SWOT analysis, basically.
It's also tactical, but then he drops the magic of death.
He says, I have a plan. It is exciting. I can already see how beautifully it works. But upon completion of the planning, it seems to me impossible. Will I still carry it out? Or will I have the strength to kill it and come up with something else?
That is terrifying. The magic of death isn't about dying. It's about the death of your own ideas. The ability to kill your darlings when they become a limitation.
It's a hack. Being able to set a boundary and then destroy it when it no longer serves you.
Speaking of boundaries, he moves into sexual magic. And he goes straight to the Kabbalistic stuff, Yesod, the sphere of illusion and charm. He says sex reminds us of our vulnerability.
And he basically calls us out on our glamour. He says if you feel like you need designer clothes, big cars, and expensive partners just to feel sexually attractive, well, something might be wrong with you.
He's so brutal. If you need the trappings to feel hot, you're not actually hot.
But he's right. He says true attractiveness starts with self-love. We keep circling back to that.
So if we go back to the wealth thing, he says, if you want wealth, do not obsess over the desire.
Because if you're attached to it, you'll never have it. He says the subconscious, which he calls the great magician, doesn't understand the concept of wanting. All wanting does is remind the universe of what you lack.
That's such a wait what moment. You think I'm manifesting, but you're actually just broadcasting a lack signal.
Exactly. He says people who want fame end up as idiots because they get the kind of fame that is just a hollow reflection of their own ego.
So, instead of chasing fame, he says, do the magic of business. Learn how to lead, how to inspire, how to make doors open for you. Learn the subtle art of management.
He literally suggests using the archetype of the emperor or the shah or the sultan. Read Machiavelli. Learn how power works.
It's about competence. It's more than vibes. It's actual, measurable skills. Like how an emperor uses praise but hates flattery. It's about earning respect through action.
And he brings it back to that Indian tradition of Siddhi where magical powers are just byproducts of life, like Ganesha. He brings wealth, but he isn't attached to it. He's completely relaxed in the world.
That's the goal, isn't it? To be able to enjoy the abundance without being consumed by the need for it.
He defines the magic of wealth so beautifully here. He says it's just the process of learning to perceive and enjoy life under any circumstances.
That sounds a lot more like freedom than fortune.
It is. It's about that nobility of spirit and generosity, all of which, again, require that core skill, being able to relax in the here and now.
It's a lot of pressure, honestly, to be that present.
Well, it gets even easier, or harder, depending on how you look at it. He moves into magic without props. He says a true master can do all of this without a single ritual tool. Just visualization and a calm, steady presence.
No crystals, no candles, no expensive incense. Just you and your imagination.
He says a high-level magician doesn't need to surround themselves with symbols of wealth, but they should look like a person who is lucky, someone who always seems to be in the right place at the right time.
So, magic is just being able to spot the patterns in the chaos, seeing the secret patterns that weave through everyday life, and recognizing the lucky coincidences.
It's not about making miracles happen. It's about realizing that the miracles are already happening, and you just need to be stilled enough to catch them. Honestly, Jane, I think we've reached our limit on deep thoughts for one sitting. The Ethiopian food is actually here.
Thank God, because my brain was starting to crave something more substantial than existential dread.
Okay, we're back. Okay, we are back, and I am feeling so much momentum right now. We're moving from the what of chaos magic into the how specifically, how to actually build something.
Yeah, the coding part. Because apparently we're programming the astral plane now.
Exactly. Look at how he starts this section. He says, and I love this phrasing, that it's much more convenient to define servitors in cybernetic terms, like they're part of a programmable astral system.
It's giving Matrix vibes, like instead of a ritual circle, you just need a better compiler.
but he makes it so grounded. He says the first step is just defining the general character of your intent. You don't need a massive grimoire. You just need an area, like healing or protection. And he even suggests using old school stuff he mentions, looking up a book of correspondences, specifically Crowley's 777, to gather associations like smells, colors, or planetary signs.
I mean, it's a classic move. If you want to program a function, you need the right libraries, right? He's basically saying, gather all the sensory data for healing and plug it in.
Right. And then this is my favorite part. He moves to the specific intention. He calls this declaration of intent the ethereal DNA of the servitor. I mean, that is such a beautiful way to put it.
A bit dramatic, but okay. I guess if you don't define the DNA, you end up with a magical creature that's just a sentient puddle of confusion.
Exactly. He says you might even need SWOT analysis. You know, that business tool to check your motivations. He's literally telling you to use corporate strategy to build a spirit.
It's a life hack. How to disrupt the astral market with a highly optimized servitor.
But look how he describes the actual construction. He talks about adding symbols to a sigil to enhance the program. He shows this example of a healing sigil inside a hexagram. He says the hexagram brings harmony and the elements of fire and water. The fire to burn the disease, the water to flush it out.
It's more than just decoration, though. He says the number 7 is added there to represent harmony and even the service life of the servitor. It's a literal expiration date.
Wait, that's so clever. It's like a software license.
Yeah, it keeps it from running wild forever. But what really got me, though, was his metaphor for the mind. He moves away from all this subjective versus objective psychology stuff and says the subconscious is like an ocean with islands of individual self.
I love that. He says our self is like an iceberg. Most of it is hidden under the surface, interacting with the depths. And he says magic works by warming the iceberg from the inside. So you don't stay a frozen, static block of ice, but become more sensitive to the currents.
And here's the kicker, he says, symbols are capsules of experience. They aren't just pretty pictures. They are high-speed data transfers. Think about road signs. If road signs were written in long, descriptive sentences, there would be absolute chaos on the streets.
Exactly. A symbol is a shortcut. It bypasses the slow, logical part of your brain and hits the deep symbolic layer instantly.
It's why a simple red octagon tells you stop faster than a paragraph of legal text. In magic, a sigil does the same thing. It's a compressed file of emotion, memory, and intent that you just unzip directly into your subconscious.
It makes it feel so much more accessible. Not this scary ancient mystery, but a language we already know how to speak.
Even if we're currently just learning how to spell.
Okay, so if we're using these symbols as data transfers, Hine says we should actually prioritize the ones that are, well, messy. He says personally created sigils, or even symbols that just pop up from your subconscious are way more effective than anything you find in a book.
Because they're customized. It's like using a generic preset on a synthesizer versus building your own patch from scratch. The custom one actually speaks your language.
Exactly. He says they reflect your psychicosm more accurately. But he's not saying throw away the classics. If you've already learned a system, just plug it in. Use it as part of the build.
Just don't let the programming get out of hand. I mean, look at this next part. He's talking about the expiration date again. He says you should decide if you want a full-time servitor or a temp.
A temp servitor? Like you're hiring a freelancer for a one-day gig. And he actually gives a concrete example. This healing servitor he mentions, he instructs it to act for 7 days for 7 minutes every 7 hours.
7, 7, 7. That is some heavy-duty numerical symbolism right there. It's like setting a loop in a DAW.
But here's the part that actually made me pause. He says for these specific task-oriented servitors, you should dismantle them once the job is done.
Wait, how? Does he mean like deleting the file?
Yeah, he says you can build a self-destruct code right into the sigil. You define the endpoint in the intent. Help heal, working in 7/7/7 intervals, the sum of which is your lifespan. Once the math hits 0, the servitor is done.
That's actually really responsible, because he brings up that old occult warning that if you don't watch your thought forms, they start wandering the astral plane and basically annoying people.
Yeah, like a pop-up ad that won't close. And he says even from a purely psychological view, it's smart to dismantle them, so you can let go of the desire that created them in the first place. It's like clearing your cache.
It keeps the psychic clutter down. But what about the physical side? He mentions a material base. Like, you need a physical anchor.
Right. Rings, crystals, even a little figurine. He says it helps you personify the entity. He even suggests you could use bodily fluids to strengthen the connection.
Okay, a bit much for a Monday morning, Em. But I get it, it's about making it visceral. Like using a specific scent. Maybe an essential oil so that every time you smell it, the servitor activates.
It's all about those sensory triggers. And he says the shape can be anything a tiny homunculus, or just a pulsing, glowing sphere of light.
As long as the code works, I don't care if it looks like a disco ball.
But then he gets into the actual launch sequence. This isn't just theory anymore. He gives a step-by-step procedure. It starts with a space cleansing ritual.
And it's very physical. You stand facing east, breathing deep, moving your arms to form a Tau cross, then a cross of light.
It sounds almost like a dance. He has you tracing a pentagram in the air, making these sounds I-A-O to make it glow.
It's building tension. He moves from the space cleansing to the declaration of intent, and then, this part is wild, he calls it the lightning flash exercise.
This is where it gets intense. He tells you to visualize yourself as a lonely oak tree in a dark, stormy field. You're rooted, but the wind is picking up, the electricity in the air is rising.
And you're supposed to let that tension build until you can't take it anymore. You're vibrating. Your breathing is shallow. The whole world is shaking.
And then, boom, a massive bolt of lightning hits you. You feel the discharge surging through your body, down into your roots, and then a deep rumble comes up from the earth to meet it.
It's a total system reboot. You're observing the ritual and becoming the lightning.
It's incredible. You can almost feel the static in the air just reading his description of the lightning flash.
It's like he's describing a physical sensation of being overclocked. But then, he immediately shifts gears into the explosive wave technique. And honestly, Em, this is where the hack becomes a literal launch sequence.
Yes, he says this is a simple exercise for launching servitors or even just magic in general. He tells you to sit in a comfortable pose. He even suggests the dragon pose, and just breathe. But then, you start visualizing this energy pooling in your solar plexus, turning into a white light.
And it's more than a static ball. He says you project this light forward like a thread stretching it out, and then this is the wild part, you let it grow upward into a pulsating energy pillar, like you're growing a skyscraper of pure intent.
And once you're sure it's bright enough, you just let it go. You detach it from yourself. He literally says, this pillar is the raw material for your servitor.
It's like you're 3D printing an entity out of pure light. But then he moves to the programming stage. He says you take that pillar and make the top swell into a sphere, and then you start feeding it your instructions.
I love how he describes the coding here. You can give it a shape, or you can visualize symbols flowing into it. He even suggests that if you have a name for the servitor, you can sing it as a mantra, letting each sound saturate the entity with energy.
Or, if you want to get really sci-fi, he says you can visualize the sigils as DNA strands weaving through the servitor's cells, muscles, and nerves. It's literally biohacking the astral plane.
But then comes the climax. He says your breathing gets faster, more intense. You start counting backward from 10, 10, 9, 8, and the tension just builds and builds.
And the visualization becomes fragmented, almost feverish. You're on the edge of a breakdown. And then, on the count of 1, you inhale deeply and shout, "Start!"
And then phew, the servitor rockets into the sky like a missile, and you just collapse. He says you should feel completely exhausted.
I mean, if you don't feel like you just ran a marathon, did you even do the ritual? But okay, let's step back from the high-intensity stuff. He moves into universal servitors.
Right, because not everything needs to be a one-day freelancer like that healing servitor we talked about earlier. He says universal servitors are like expert systems. They learn. The more tasks they do, the more efficient they become.
It's like an AI model. You feed it more data, it gets smarter. And he gives this example of a servitor named Yamaga. It was created by a group of 12 people at a seminar. Everyone could use it. It was even programmed to holographically divide itself so every person using it got a piece of the original power.
That is so much more scalable than a single person spell. It's communal magic. But there is a warning, and it's a heavy one.
Yeah, the dependency trap. He tells this story about his own servitor, Uwerka. It was designed for inspiration, for intellectual creative breakthroughs. And at first, it was like a third brain for him.
But then he mentions the astrology, the retrograde of Neptune and Uranus in 93.
And suddenly, Eureka just disconnected. And because he'd relied on it so much, he couldn't function without it. He became addicted to the servitor's presence. He couldn't find his creative flow on his own anymore.
That's so scary. To realize you've outsourced your own soul to a piece of software you built. He had to dismantle it to break it down until only a spark remained.
A way to keep the light without the leash. But if you want to get truly, chaotic, he moves into virus servitors.
Oh boy, this is the part where the life hack becomes a malware attack.
Exactly. He says you can program a servitor with a self-reproduction command, like you tell it, if this person doesn't return my stolen keys, start causing chaos.
And it starts with small things. A short circuit, a lost key, a minor inconvenience. But as the deadline passes, the virus multiplies. The chaos intensifies. It escalates until you're basically dealing with a full-on poltergeist.
It's a way to force a resolution to sheer psychological or astral pressure. It's aggressive, sure, but in a post-truth world, sometimes you need a little disruption to get things moving.
It's all just tools, isn't it? Whether it's a beautiful light pillar or a localized chaos virus. It's all about having the agency to change the script.
As long as you don't let the script start writing you. But wait, he's introducing something else now. Chaos minds. And they aren't even servitors. This is getting way too technical for one sitting. My brain needs a minute to process the malware aspect.
Agreed. Let's grab some water and stretch before we hit the mines. Okay, we're back. Okay, we are back. And I have to say, after that last session with the handpan, I'm feeling incredibly open. Like the boundaries are just a little thinner today.
Careful, Em. If you get any more open, you might start accidentally hosting a localized weather system.
Maybe. But look, we're diving back into Phil Hine's condensed chaos, and we're picking up right where the hacking gets really literal. He's talking about how we intentionally create chaos to increase the odds of happy accidents and wonderful events.
Which, let's be honest, is just a fancy way of saying manifesting good vibes through organized mayhem.
Exactly. But he moves from this abstract idea of vibes into something much more technical. He starts talking about programming languages for servitors.
Wait, did he just say programming languages? I thought we were talking about magic, not Python or C++.
That's the whole point of the cybernetic model we discussed earlier. He admits that when he first wrote about using servitors like computer manuals, he was being pretty funny about it. But then as infotech became everything, the metaphor actually started working.
So, it's a metaphor?
He says it's an analogy between a sigilized intention and actual computer code. Like, the sigil is the instruction set that the servitor executes. He even describes a loop where you use runes like Othala or Tier 2 reinforce the command and an infinity symbol to keep it cycling.
I love that. It's so modular. No need to learn a 1,000-year-old dead language if you can just use IFR, then logic.
Right. He literally says you can treat magic like an operational block. Like, if condition X happens, then activate the servitor. It's much more precise than just, wishing for something.
It's more coding the reality you want. But wait, he's also moving from these little digital-style servitors to functional spirits. And this is where it gets weird, even for me.
You mean the part about the Lemminjitten, the lesser key of Solomon?
Yeah, he brings up the heady hitters. These spirits with terrifying names and even weirier looks. He mentions Ram, who looks like a thrush, but can you know, level cities or fix a broken heart.
But he does this incredible pivot. He says, you don't have to use a centuries-old ritual to summon them. You can just stumble into them.
Okay, I was not prepared for traffic jam magic.
No, it's the funniest thing. He talks about being stuck in a massive traffic jam or a crowded, sweaty train carriage in the heat. And instead of a demon in the triangle, he introduces us to Padokotop,
A cat. On a skateboard. Wearing sunglasses?
Yes, a spirit that specifically exists to dissolve traffic jams and ease movement. He says you can summon him just by listening for a specific sound and noise, and then you just visualize yourself gliding along with him.
Honestly, I'd take a skateboarding cat over a terrifying demon any day. It's actually kind of genius. It's not about conquering a monster. It's about shifting your internal state to match the spirit's vibe, which is coolness and ease.
But there's a catch. You can't just use him for free. He says you have to offer something back. For Podokot, it's simple. Let someone else merge into your lane, or be kind to a random cat you see on the street.
It's actually a pretty solid life hack. It's training your brain to look for opportunities for generosity while you're stuck in a gridlock. It turns a moment of pure frustration into a moment of ritual.
And it ties back to his bigger point about how spirits are everywhere. He says we shouldn't think spirits only exist in a ritual circle or just inside our heads. He actually claims that certain patterns like addiction can be viewed as spirits, or viruses that move between people.
Now, that is the dark side of the hack. The idea that an idea or a behavior can be a self-replicating parasitic entity.
It makes the whole cybernetic model much more intense, doesn't it? If a belief is a virus, then magic is the antivirus.
Or the way we rewrite the code.
Okay, so we just went from skateboarding cats to, well, the fundamental architecture of reality. Hine is making this wild claim about tarot decks. He says they aren't just tools, but collections of spirits that emerge whenever you interact with the cards.
Wait. So he's saying that if I pull the death card, I'm actually summoning every spirit attached to every other death card in existence?
Exactly. He calls it an extrapolation. If you believe a specific spirit is linked to a specific card, then by using that card, you're tapping into a massive shared pool of those energies. It's like a multiplayer server, but for archetypes.
That explains why my tarot sessions sometimes feel like a crowded subway station at rush hour.
Right? But then he takes it even further. He says we're already magically conditioned to believe in the old spirits: earth, air, fire, water. But then he asks, and this part actually gave me chills. He asks, what about the new elements? Like gasoline, electricity, or nuclear energy?
Whoa.
I know. He's asking if we can interact with the spirits that arise from nuclear processes.
I mean, if we're using the cybernetic model we talked about earlier, it makes sense. If magic is about shifting neurological patterns to match environmental stimuli, then a nuclear reactor is definitely a stimulus. There's got to be some heavy radioactive energy pattern living in that flux.
And he doesn't leave it as a question. He says, decide for yourself. He moves back to this idea of a pantheistic model. These spirits aren't hiding in some spooky, dark astral dimension. They are everywhere. They're like the sweet taste of an apple. They emerge from how we perceive the world.
So they exist whether we look at them or not. They're just part of the information field.
Yeah, he says we might give them form and strength by choosing to believe in them, but they exist in this massive, vast information field regardless. But then he pivots. He starts chapter 7 and the title is just Ego Magic.
Oh boy, here comes the psychological heavy lifting.
He starts by defining the ego. He says our sense of self is just a clump of beliefs, habits, and labels. It's all about how we distinguish ourselves from the others. We take on these masks, these roles, and we just agree to play by the rules of the dominant reality.
Which, let's be honest, is usually just the boring, mundane world where we have to pay taxes and eat kale.
Exactly. And he says most people think the material world is too down to earth to be a source of power, but chaos magic insists on working with the fragments of that reality. He uses the word fractal again. He says we should use all these different belief systems intellectually, physically, and emotionally to expand our boundaries.
Like Tantra. He actually compares it to tantric practice. You accept the things you used to reject, and that's how you push the boundaries of what's possible.
Right, but he warns that this takes colossal determination. Because to adopt a new belief system, you have to literally put on a new mask, adopt a new way of behaving, and basically admit that your permanent personality is a lie.
That sounds terrifying. I like my masks. They're comfortable. They have built-in padding.
I know, but look at what he says about the modern world. Everything is becoming more fractal and fragmented. People are getting scared. They're looking for roots and tradition and returning to nature, just to find a foothold in the chaos. He calls it the chaos of the normal.
Because the normal is falling apart. Everything is unstable. Jobs, faith, technology. So people cling to these islands of order. They join subcultures, they adopt strict codes of dress or belief just to feel like they belong to something.
And he points out the trap. He says that while this clinging feels like it's protecting you, for a magician, it actually leads to egotic elitism and closed-mindedness.
Wait, so the goal isn't to find a stronger identity to hide behind?
No, he says the whole point of chaos magic and tantra is the destruction of the personality.
That is a massive U-turn from what most people think self-improvement is. Usually, people want to build a better ego.
Exactly. He says we should move from the ego, which is all about me versus them, to the ego, which is about being in a constant state of dynamic activity. He goes back to Austin Osman Spare here. He says Spare's love of self wasn't about being narcissistic.
Let me guess. It wasn't about I love my beautiful face.
No, it was about creating a vacuum at the core of your personality. A space where you can enter any social circle, any belief system, any role, without getting trapped by it. True self-love is the freedom to move through the world without needing a permanent label.
So you're not finding yourself. You're making yourself unfindable by the labels?
Precisely. You become the space where all these things happen. But, and there's always a but with Hine, he ends this section with a huge warning. He says people try to find escape from the reality of life through things like drugs, sex, or even utopian romanticism. He calls these Michudo paths of salvation.
Ouch. Calling out the spiritual crowd.
He's saying that if you're just using these things to flee from the boredom of reality, you're not actually doing magic. You're just running away. It's heavy, isn't it? This idea that even our rebellions, our politics, our lifestyle changes are just ways of decorating the walls of our prison.
It's cynical. He's basically saying that when you try to escape by starting a counterculture or a new movement, you're just creating a little temporary enclave that the mainstream is eventually just going to swallow up and turn into a fashion trend.
Exactly. Like a revolution that just becomes a new aesthetic. He says the dominant reality eventually just crushes these enclaves. But then he offers this incredible alternative. He says, magic is the great escape from life.
Wait, that sounds like the Mesudo paths he was just criticizing. Isn't that the escape through drugs or sex that he said was a dead end?
No, listen to the distinction. He says political structures try to change the structure by changing the people. But magic says change the person and the structure changes.
So instead of trying to fix the traffic jam by banning cars, you just change your internal relationship with the car?
Right. It's about moving from the outside in. He says that while we're all stuck in this society of the spectacle, which, by the way, is a massive critique of modern consumerism, the magic practitioner uses their own will to transform the world from within.
He uses Aleister Crowley as an example here. And I love how he frames it. He doesn't say Crowley was a saint. He says Crowley tried to escape the society of the spectacle by becoming the spectacle.
That is so much more badass than just running away.
Yeah, he used his fans, his students, his books to create this free zone where he could be every version of himself. He turned his life into a performance so intense that the boundaries of traditional morality just couldn't hold him.
But he's also warning us about this modern obsession with individuality. He says it's become pathologically grotesque. We're all obsessed with finding our true, higher, authentic self.
Because we think there's some golden nugget of truth hidden deep inside us.
Right. But Hine says, and this is the chaos part, that if nothing is true and everything is permitted, then if you peel back all the masks and all the roles, there might just be a gaping vortex of emptiness underneath.
That is a terrifying thought. No true self at the center, just a void?
But he says that is the freedom. The goal isn't to find a real you, it's to be able to inhabit the void. He says we shouldn't try to escape reality, but joyfully accept it as our arena. We use the dominant reality to realize our will.
So, we're not building walls to keep the world out. We're using the world as our canvas.
Exactly. But here is the hard part. He says this is an elite task. Not elite like, I'm better than you, but elite because it requires the stamina and determination to constantly strip away layers of your own personality.
Which brings us to the next big header, the destruction of the self-concept.
And he gets so practical here. He says deconditioning is the process of realizing that yourself is just a web of learned behaviors and socialized patterns. You're not you. You're just a collection of everything you've been told to be.
My ego is basically a collection of unpaid subscriptions to different identities.
Precisely. And he says while changing, a belief is easy. You can just decide you believe in aliens tomorrow changing. The structures of your personality is much harder. Some parts of us are invisible to our own awareness. They hide in the shadows.
He uses this great metaphor. He says if your beliefs are buildings in the city of ego, then deconditioning is like systematically cutting down the towers that rise above the city walls.
And he admits that sometimes the whole building collapses. To get to those deep hidden layers, you need powerful forms of Gnosis. He specifically mentions sexual ecstasy, intense pain, or, well, LSD.
The classic toolkit.
But he warns that even when you break through, you're at risk of just building a new fence immediately. You move past one limitation only to find you've accidentally surrounded yourself with a new set of rules.
It's like upgrading your software, but the new version comes with even more annoying pop-up ads.
Exactly, and he gives this really biting example of a young magician. This guy intellectually accepted that he had some repressed homoerotic attractions. He thought, okay, I've acknowledged this, I'm liberated. So he went out and had some encounters, but he says it didn't actually change anything. He felt no pleasure, only a reinforcement of his old opinion.
Oh, I see. He was just performing liberation to satisfy his ego.
Yes, he used the intellectual change as a new mask to wear. He said, look at me, I'm a progressive, liberated magician. But the underlying structure, the actual aversion or discomfort was still there, hidden.
So true magic isn't about saying, I believe this. It's about the much more painful, much more uncomfortable process of actually acting differently, even when it's terrifying.
Right. Because as he says, the change only works when the desire to get rid of the limitation is stronger than the desire to keep it. You have to actually want to lose the self you're so proud of. My brain is officially fried from all that heavy deconstruction. Let's grab some snacks and play a quick round of Munchkin.
Please, I need something low stakes where I can just smash monsters instead of my own psyche.
Okay, we're back. Okay, we are back. And I've been staring at this opening paragraph of the new chapter for 10 minutes, just trying to process how heavy this is.
It's heavy because it's an autopsy. He's talking about taking a scalpel to the fundamental structures that make us think we know who we are.
Right. He says we have to unravel and untangle the threads that form this false idea of self. And he gets so blunt about it. He says people try to just drop all the chains and declare themselves immoral, but he calls that out as just self-deception.
Yeah, because you're just swapping one ego trip for another. Look at me. I'm so liberated. I have no morals. It's just a new costume.
Exactly. And he even hits the spiritual crowd. He says people brag about conquering the ego, but if you lose your sense of individual uniqueness, you're powerless. Because, as we've been saying all episode, magic is about action. You can't change anything if you've erased the you that's doing the changing.
It's a paradox. You have to dismantle the ego, but you can't annihilate the agent.
So he offers this wild alternative. He says if you can't just drop the chains, then you wear new masks.
God, I love that. It's so much more practical than just letting go.
He's literally telling you, change your politics, change from an introvert to an extrovert, change your sexual behavior, even change your physical gestures. He's saying, adopt identities that are far beyond your current self-concept.
It's like software updates. You aren't changing the hardware, you're just installing a new OS to see how the machine responds to different inputs.
But, and here's the catchy, warns you not to wake up one morning and decide, today I am a hedonistic Satanist seeking pleasure. He says that kind of sudden shift is just a whim. Real change requires emotional energy and time.
And it has to work in the real world. He says the real test isn't how you feel in your head, but whether you can convince those around you that you've actually changed. If they recognize and accept the new you, that's the success.
That's such a great way to put it. It's about the social friction.
Actually, there's a beautiful way he frames the payoff here. He says the real lesson isn't even about the new belief. It's that by trying on these unacceptable beliefs, you realize that both your old self and the new self are, in a way, meaningless. It's not cynicism, it's liberation.
Nothing is true, but as long as you're wearing the mask, it is true. That is a life hack for the post-truth era. It's about utilizing whichever reality works for the moment.
But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. He follows that up with a massive warning. He says if you destroy the building in the city of ego, it will just rebuild itself in a different form.
That's the part that scares me, the invisible defense of the ego. He calls it magophilia, this tendency to think you're better than others, looking down on the herd. He says if you start seeing people as just cattle or low lives, you've actually lost the plot.
Yeah, he's calling out the pretenders, the wannabe witches and gurus who use magic as an excuse to be assholes. He even references Raskolnikov, the guy who thought he had the right to kill just to prove he was an extraordinary man.
He's saying, don't be a murderer of connection. Use the magic to find harmony, not to isolate yourself.
Which leads perfectly into his mapping exercises. He's giving us the actual toolkit here, no fluff.
I love these. He starts with the third person. Write an evaluation of yourself as if you were a new stranger writing a performance review. It's so clinical, it's brilliant.
And then the Book of Errors. He tells you to keep a catalog of every painful, shameful, or guilty moment. Not to wallow in it. Not to drown in self-pity, but to have an honest catalog of the shadows.
It's about mapping the territory. You can't navigate a landscape if you're pretending the swamps don't exist.
But then he hits us with the obsessive ideas. This part, it actually gave me chills. He describes us as being held by ancient, innocent fingers deep inside us, pulling our strings like puppets. We think we have free will, but we're just reacting to programs written by a child's messy handwriting or old traumas.
It's so visceral. These monsters are just our own obsessions. And he points out that when we're caught off guard by our own desires, we freeze.
And that's when the defense mechanisms kick in, aggression or apathy. If you can't get what you want, you lash out or you just shut down.
It's all part of the same loop. The software is glitching and we're just trying to patch the code. Okay, I think I need to sit down. Or stand up. I don't know. That last section on thought forms, Jane, he literally describes a monster that we feed with our own energy, using umbilical cords made of years of habit.
And he says it's hunting us. He says we feel its hot breath on our necks when we're scared or in pain. It's terrifying because he's not talking about some external demon. He's saying the monster is us. It's a program we wrote.
But then, and this is the hack perch, he says the moment we realize it's just a program, the prey becomes the hunter. We can tear it apart. We can tear it apart. We can strip it to the bone.
Yeah, but you can't just wish it away. He gives this incredibly practical, almost clinical way to do it. You have to attack it on 3 fronts: the cognitive, the physiological, and the behavioral.
Right. He says we have to ruthlessly analyze the thoughts. No more romanticizing the obsession. In the physical part, you actually have to calm the body. Use meditation to stop the racing heart and the tension. You can't think your way out of a panic attack if your muscles are still clenched like stone.
And don't forget the behavioral side. He says if your obsession is making you act like a freak or hurting people, look at what other people are saying. Use the I Ching or the tarot to see the external reality. It's like using an external debugger for your own brain.
I love that. But then he moves into regression and sublimation, and it gets very call-out culture.
He's basically saying, stop crying to get your way.
Exactly. He says regression is just putting a child's face on yourself so someone will come and comfort you. He calls it manipulation. We've all done it, right?
I've seen enough wounded healers to know exactly what he means. And sublimation is just as shady. He says it's just pretending everything is even and redirecting the energy. But the demons, they don't go away. They just take the back stairs and wait for you to open the door again.
That's such a haunting image, like a spider waiting in the dark.
It's the imposter syndrome of magic. You think you've moved past the shadow, but you've just hidden it in the basement.
Okay, let's try to find some light. Because he does talk about fantasy as a tool. He talks about using starter fantasies to give meaning to new situations, or grinder fantasies to get through boring tasks.
Like a mental caffeine hit.
But he warns that fantasy is a double-edged sword. He says there's this constant conflict between the desire to make the fantasy real and the desire to keep it safe in your head. Because once you act on it, the magic of the dream might die.
It becomes a closed loop. You stay stuck in the dream because you're too afraid of the failure of the reality.
So, how do we break it? He gives this amazing example about positive identification. He tells this story about a guy who hated math had a total block against it, but then he realized, hey, I can make a computer do what I want.
And suddenly, the math hater identity was overwritten by the power user identity. He didn't argue with the old self. He just let a new, more useful self take the driver's seat.
It's so much more effective than just saying, I hate math. It's about finding a new mask that actually works. He even mentions how this applies to much heavier things, like accepting sexual identity when you've been conditioned to feel shame. It's that same breaking of the barriers.
It's about moving from I am this broken thing to I am the person who can navigate this complexity.
And he ends this section with this beautiful multi-layered idea of the many selves. He mentions Tantra, you know how much I love that and how Shiva is surrounded by many Shaktis, but he doesn't sleep with them all at once.
He's saying we don't need one single permanent soul. We need a toolkit of identities. We can pick a neutral self to observe the world without getting caught up in it. Someone calm, observant, almost detached.
Or a warrior self when we need to fight, or a creator self. The goal isn't to find the true you, it's to learn how to let the right you, it's to learn how to let the right you sit on the throne at the right time.
It's terrifying to have no permanent center.
But it's the only way to be truly free, to use the pieces of yourself to build a reality that isn't just a prison of old habits. Okay, so we've just finished that intense bit about the monsters inside us, and now Hine is shifting gears. He's addressing the elephant in the room, the skeptics who say, wait, you can't just make up magic. It has to be old, it has to be from a real lineage, it has to be authentic.
Yeah, it's not real magic if it didn't come from a dusty scroll in a cave crowd.
Exactly, and he just dismisses them. He says, look, magic relies on a belief system. It's a symbolic or linguistic framework that helps you interpret your experience. He doesn't care if it's the good old traditional Kabbalah or some new age nonsense about a shaman telling you a story.
One Indian shaman told me, God, that is a stinging jab.
It really is, but he's making a point. He says it doesn't matter which system you use, as long as you draw inspiration from it. But then, and this is the part where he gets really practical, he says you can't just share a custom system with other people and expect it to work.
Right, because you haven't built what did he call it? The alphabet of desires? Like Austin Osman Spier's stuff?
Yeah, if you're working alone, you can make up anything. But for magic to have weight, for it to work when you try to manifest it, there has and must be trust in the beliefs. And here's the secret. If you can give yourself a rational explanation for why it works, you'll believe it more deeply.
And if you believe it, it works.
Precisely. He says if you're 110% sure a ritual is going to be damn good, the probability of it working goes way up. He even uses this crazy example of reaching the chakras.
Oh, I know where this is going.
He says, fine, you believe in 7 chakras. Go ahead, meditate on them. Hammer that symbolism into your brain, and presto, you'll start feeling them. But then he says, switch. Just flip a switch. Accept as an axiom that there are only 5 psychic centers based on the Sephiroth of the middle pillar, and he promises you'll start getting corresponding confirmations.
That is incredibly cheeky. It's like he's saying, the universe is a mirror. If you decide the mirror shows 5 things, it will show 5 things.
It's all about that information matrix. He says a belief system is just a matrix you fill with emotional energy. He uses this brilliant analogy of a movie or a music video. When you're so absorbed in a film that it feels real and triggers actual emotions, that's magic.
It's that immersion we were talking about earlier with the masks.
Exactly. And he brings up Star Trek.
No way. Are we talking about Spock now?
Yes. He says most people know the Star Trek universe better than any ancient religion. They know Mr. Spock better than the Celtic god Lug. And even though Star Trek is totally fictional, it reflects modern psychology through myth. Spock is the logician, Sulu is the warrior, Scotty is the builder.
It's a functional archetypal system. It's not about historical truth. It's about psychological utility.
Yes, and he tells this hilarious story about a colleague who was struggling to study for a computer exam. He couldn't find a divine form to help him focus. He tried Mercury, he tried Hermes, and then it hit him, Mr. Spock. He started studying everything about Spock, quoting, "I never understood humans," and he basically Spockified himself. And he passed the exam.
I mean, if you can pass a coding exam by channeling a Vulcan, I'm in.
But then, and here's where he gets a bit dark again, he brings it back to Lovecraft. He talks about the great old ones. He says he actually likes working with these entities because they represent the fear of the unknown.
The slimy creatures with tentacles.
Yeah. He admits it sounds weird, and he even confesses with a bit of embarrassment. He says that he's had interesting results working with the system based on the Narnia books.
Okay, now you've lost me. I'm not sure I'm ready to summon a talking lion for my grocery shopping.
But the point isn't the lion or the tentacles. The point is suspension of disbelief. He says the real trick is being able to adopt a belief for a short time and then discard it. You need to be able to believe Cthulhu is real enough to feel the slime on you during a ritual, but then walk away and not believe in him at all when you're making tea.
It's that programming skill again. You use the belief as a tool, not a prison.
Exactly. He ends this by saying the biggest obstacle for beginners isn't lack of knowledge, it's that painful doubt that says this is all nonsense. You can read all of Crowley, but until you have the personal experience that magic works, it's all just theory.
Because practical proof is worth 1,000 theoretical arguments.
If you can find the emotional engagement to use the system to express your will, then just do it. Work.
Well, speaking of working, I think I need a coffee. Or a Vulcan. I haven't decided which one will help me finish this transcript. Right, but before we get into any more programming, let's take a quick breather and grab some caffeine.
Agreed. My brain needs a reset anyway. Okay, we are back. I am still buzzing from that handpan session with Paco last night. So my brain is basically in a state of open tabs right now.
As usual. I'm just sitting here wondering if I can survive the rest of his script without a massive espresso.
Well, you'll need it because we are diving into the meat of Phil Hine's condensed chaos. And today, we're looking at the how-to of identity hijacking.
If you can call it that. It's more like psychological software updates.
Exactly. So look at how Hine starts this section. He gives this incredible vivid image of a woman who decided to embody the goddess Kali. He says she went to disco clubs, clanking her chains with eyes like laser beams, looking at the crowd with this absolute regal power.
I mean, that is a mood. I can totally see that. It's more than just playing dress up though, is it?
No, and that's the point. He says it's like those adolescent games where you pretend to be a hero to gain a piece of their power. He's making a direct link between a kid playing superhero and a practitioner using invocation.
Right, because it's not about some external deity coming down from a cloud. It's about using the concept of the deity to access qualities like strength or focus that are already latent in you.
It's the hackable mind again. He says all gods and goddesses embody physical or mental qualities we want to develop. He literally defines invocation as deep, though temporary, identification with a mythical entity.
But let's be real, you aren't just thinking about Kali. He gets very technical here. He says the success of this depends on your visualization, your voice, your gestures, even your kinesthetic memory.
Yeah, he's basically saying you have to perform the belief until your body believes it too. You can't just sit there and think, I am powerful. You have to move like power.
It's a lot of work. He even mentions using it to look at your shadow self or to boost concentration for other magic. It's a tool, not a religion.
And he proves it with the specific example, Ra-Hur-Hut-Hewitt. This Egyptian deity, part of the Horus lineage. He describes him as a god of strength and silence.
And he uses the biology of the falcon to explain the psychology. A falcon is aggressive, it's a predator, but it's also incredibly still and focused until the moment it strikes.
So if you invoke Ra-Hur-Hut, you aren't just praying to a bird-headed man. You are literally downloading the software of precision, alertness, and that lethal, detached focus.
It's a productivity hack, just with more ancient Egyptian vibes.
Exactly. And this is where it gets wild. He actually provides a path-working script. It's like a guided meditation. He takes you on a yacht on the Nile, past the Sphinx, up a marble staircase inside a pyramid.
I was actually reading this part, and I felt that chill I get when I hear my didgeridoo. He describes this heavy, ancient atmosphere. You're walking through these dark galleries, feeling the weight of centuries, until you find this temple.
And there's the centerpiece and altar with a green cross and a red rose. It's so specific. It's meant to ground your senses. And then you see him. Ra-Hur-Hut sits on a massive green throne.
And he doesn't just sit there looking pretty, he speaks. He says, I am the god of silence and strength. My left hand is empty, for I destroy the universe, and only emptiness remains.
That is intense.
It's terrifying. He says the energy flowing from the god's fingers is so much that you actually have to recoil. You can't take it all at once.
But that's the point of the hack, right? The energy fills you. You see visions of what you can do, and then you just go back to the world. You're changed. You have this flame in your chest, but you're still you.
Just a version of you that knows how to use a much more powerful engine.
You're still walking the same streets, but now you're looking at them through the eyes of a falcon. So after that intense trip through the pyramid, the text says you return to ordinary time. You open your eyes, stretch, and you're back.
Yeah, but the goal isn't just to go back to being your boring everyday self. Hine says the whole point of the exercise is to get used to those qualities of Ra-Hur-Hut, so that in the next stage, you can find that power within yourself.
Right. It's about moving from observation to embodiment, and he gives this very specific instruction for your intention. You can't just wing it. You have to declare it. He gives an example. I manifest the will to invoke Ra-Hur-Hut to gain magical power and foresight.
To see what my next step on the path should be. See? It's not, I want to find my lost keys. It's about strategic, high-level decision-making.
And then he moves into this technique called personification of divine forms. This part gave me chills, Jane. He tells you to stand up, relax, but stay ready for action. And then get this. You visualize Ra-Hur-Hut standing directly behind you.
Oh, that's heavy?
You feel his piercing gaze on your back. You feel the pressure of his presence. And then, when you can't bear the tension anymore, you imagine him stepping forward and entering your body.
So you're literally letting the software overwrite your current operating system.
Exactly. You stretch your arms out. You let your body become his body. You feel his power as your power. And then, and this is my favorite part, he says you have to ground yourself. You shouldn't just stay in that state forever. You visualize the god turning into a falcon and flying away into the sun.
And as he flies away, you feel this deep peace and satisfaction, like the seed of your will has been planted in the future.
It's so beautiful. But then, he shifts gears. He goes from the mystical imagery to something almost theatrical. He says, invocation is much like drama.
Of course. I mean, if you're going to play a god, you might as well get the costume and the lighting right.
He's serious. He says if you play the role well, you're rewarded. But if you forget your lines, you won't be invited back for a second season. He even admits he watches actors and comedians to study their poses and gestures to improve his own magic.
I mean, I respect the hustle, but then he breaks down the actual structure of a spell. It's more than random shouting. He says a classic invocation has 3 parts.
Let me see if I can do this. He uses this hilarious example of the big bad wolf.
That's actually a perfect way to explain it. It's a psychological ladder. You start outside the concept, move to the edge of it, and then you become the concept.
And it's all about the voice. He says it's not what you say, but how you say it. The rhythm and the diction are everything.
He talks about rhythm moving our consciousness from the heartbeat to the cycles of the seasons. It's about using rhythm to trigger movement in the body with minimal expenditure of energy, like a soldier marching to a drum.
He even points out that our subconscious loves poetry. He mentions how people in trance states, or even evangelists, often speak in this rhythmic, almost metered way.
Because rhythm bypasses the critical, logical mind. It hits the brainwaves directly. He even mentions the iambic pentameter in English.
So if you're invoking a god of war, you shouldn't be mumbling or using and You need a rhythm that is energetic, martial, and powerful. You need to match the vibe of the entity.
But here's the real-life hack in the text. He says, don't worry about finding some perfect ancient script from a dusty book. The best invocation is the one that works for you. If you're reading from a book and you can't move your hands because you're too busy holding the page, the magic loses its effectiveness.
Right. You need to be able to use your whole body. He describes a neutral pose standing or sitting. Relaxed but alert, centered. It's your baseline. And then, as you bring the entity in, your posture must change.
Yeah, your spine straightens, your chest expands, your limbs move away from your center. You're literally physically expanding your presence in the room.
It's all about that physical feedback loop. You change the pose, you change the feeling, you change the reality. Okay, so we've done the voice, we've done the posture, but Hine is saying we can actually build a whole arsenal of physical moves.
Like a martial artist, but for your psyche.
Exactly. He talks about gestures. He mentions more than just waving hands, like very intentional things. He mentions a simple emotional gesture. You know, the one a driver uses when someone cuts them off in traffic?
If it works, it works. It's an emotional release, right?
Right. But then he gets into the magic part. He says a common gesture in modern magic is throwing your dominant arm forward from the shoulder, like you're projecting your will into the future.
I love that. It's like physically launching an intention, like a projectile.
And he tells you to experiment. He suggests something really cool, cup your hands like a bowl. Try to feel energy pooling there. He says you might feel a little tingling, or even a slight resistance, like there's a tiny force pushing back against your palms.
And then, wait, I see what he's doing here. He says to imagine a sigil forming in that space between your hands.
Yes, and then boom, you take a deep breath, clap your hands loudly, and jerk them apart.
That sounds like a great way to startle someone in a quiet library. But man, for a life hack, that's incredibly visceral. You're literally using a physical shock to set the energy.
It's so much more active than just sitting there meditating. But speaking of things that are active, we have to talk about the section on the magic of masks.
And there it is, the heavy stuff.
It's intense, but look at how he frames it. He says in many shamanic cultures, masks aren't just art, they are powerful tools. Some African tribes actually keep their masks under lock and key to protect people from their gaze.
Because the mask has its own life. It's more than a piece of wood or leather.
Right? He says a mask on a wall is just decoration. But if its personality is activated, it changes everything. He says a great shaman or even a drama teacher knows that the mask can overshadow your own personality.
And that's the scary part for some people, isn't it? He says the mask doesn't just sit on your face, it displaces you. It's not that you're wearing the mask, it's that the mask is wearing your body.
That is such a haunting way to put it. The mask wears your body.
It's a total loss of control. He even mentions Keith Johnstone, a drama expert, saying that new masks have to learn how to use a body. They have to learn how to speak and move. They start out clumsy, and as they develop, they can become aggressive or playful or even use their presence to help you meet your own demons.
like the mask reveals parts of you that you didn't even know were capable of acting that way.
Yeah, it's like a mirror that's also a stranger. And he makes a funny distinction here. Masks that cover the whole face can't talk, so they use physical language. But the half masks? They chatter incessantly as soon as they learn to speak.
Poor things. They just can't help themselves. But he's very serious about the how-to here. He says you cannot do mask work on a whim. You need a leader, someone to be an anchor of hope for the people who are scared of losing themselves.
Because losing yourself in a mask can trigger some pretty intense psychological drama. You can literally feel yourself being possessed by the spirit of the mask.
So he suggests these preliminary exercises to get you ready, like playing animals, just acting out the behaviors, the fights, the grooming.
It's like a warm-up for the ego. And then there's faces. This one is fascinating. He says we all have these masks we wear every day, masks of fear, pride, or irritation that are literally baked into our facial muscles.
He suggests an exercise where everyone makes a sound for an emotion, holds the facial expression, and then moves around chaotically. It helps you see from the outside how much your identity changes just by shifting your muscles.
It's all part of that deconditioning we talked about earlier, breaking the habit of being just you. And then, of course, there's the prop section.
This part was so fun to read. He says even a simple object can trigger a character. He gives an example of a group using a faded poncho to instantly evoke Clint Eastwood, the slow walk, the squint.
Or a pair of mirrored sunglasses, and suddenly everyone is a hard-boiled detective from an American TV show.
It's so easy. It proves his point. You don't need a Hollywood budget. You just need a catalyst to trigger the archetype.
But he ends with a real warning. If you're going to work with masks, take it seriously. It can be a powerful aspect of traumatic experience, but it can also be overwhelming. You need a ritual to clean the space afterward.
And even if you're alone, doing it in meditation, it's still heavy. He says a full face mask changes how you move. You have to lift your head higher to balance the weight. It forces a sense of sacredness onto the experience.
It's turning a costume into a ritual tool. It's not about pretending, it's about inviting something else to take the lead.
I think I might need to go find some face paint, or at least a very dramatic pair of sunglasses.
Just don't start chattering incessantly at me, Emily. I'm not ready for that level of drama today.
Speaking of things being heavy, oh, the delivery guy is actually at the door already.
Perfect timing. Let's pause this ritual before we get too distracted by carbs.
Okay, we're back. Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving right back into Phil Hine's condensed chaos. If you're new here, we're looking at this through the lens of the hackable mind, treating these ancient-sounding occult practices as literal software updates for your own psychology.
Or a way to debug your brain when the code starts looping in all the wrong places.
Exactly, and today was picking up right in the middle of the toolkit. Hine is talking about how to actually build an atmosphere for ritual. He's not just talking about vibes, he's talking about sensory chains. He says we shouldn't ignore things like incense, oils, even food and fabric, because invocation works by building a chain of associations.
It's all about hacking those neural pathways. If you want to trigger a specific state, you gotta feed the brain the right sensory data.
Right, and he starts with smell. He calls out how we totally underestimate our sense of smell. He says we rely so much on sight and sound that we almost process scent subconsciously. He even notes that animals actually get way more info from smell than we do.
Well, yeah, but he makes a really interesting point about humans. He says scents instantly trigger memories, hunger, sex, or fear. It just yanks them into our conscious mind. It's like a shortcut to the subconscious.
And he gets specific. He mentions how doctors use strong synthetic smells to help people wake up from comas. But then he brings in this really cool, almost biological angle. He says women might be more sensitive to certain scents, and mentions how menstrual cycles of women living together can sync up because of pheromones.
Okay, a little bit of the biological magic theory right there. It's chemistry.
Totally. And he says when choosing scents for ritual, you have 3 options. You can use history, you can use magical correspondences like this planet goes with this scent, or And this is my favorite. He calls it the way of Tao, where you just pick whatever you think fits.
I like that. No dogma. If it works for you, it works.
Exactly. He even mentions how a bad smell, like a dentist's office, can trigger instant fear. So, if you can find a scent that builds your mood, use it. But he also moves into food and drink.
The holy offerings part.
Yeah, he says using food or drink lets participants consume the divine essence of whatever you're invoking. He gives examples like drinking mead in Germanic traditions or rum in voodoo. And he says eating a leftover ritual food actually helps you ground yourself after the work is done.
Which makes sense. You've just been doing some intense psychological heavy lifting. You need to come back to earth.
Precisely. But then this is where it gets a little spicy. He talks about clothing. Or, well, the lack of it.
Here we go.
He says the standard is a hooded robe because it hides your body shape and reminds you that you're doing something different from your everyday life. Then he says many magicians prefer working naked.
I mean, can you blame them?
He says there are huge advantages. Like your skin becomes an extra sensory organ, and being naked shows you're ready for any kind of change. Though he does joke that beginners often get self-conscious or worry that a group naked ritual is just going to turn into group sex.
To be fair, the line between ritual and party is thinner than people like to admit.
But he's serious about the tools. He moves into instruments. He talks about the ibex, this little spinning wheel that makes a buzzing sound, and says witches used it to attract the moon or bring rain.
It's all about that vibration. He also mentions the rattle and the drums. He says drumming can literally make you feel possessed by the spirit. It's that rhythmic driving force that pushes you into a trance.
And he mentions the long sounds, gongs, Tibetan singing bowls, even the didgeridoo. Which, Jane, I know you usually keep yours tucked away in the corner, but it's right there in the text.
Yeah, don't start. It's too much intense psychological drama for a Tuesday. But it leads perfectly into the next part, which is, well, it's a bit darker.
Yeah, we move into chapter 9, Taming Demons. And he's not talking about red guys with pitchforks.
No, much scarier. He defines personal demons as those hidden structures in your soul, those inescapable complexes and voices that your ego tries to even suppress.
These are the things that run our lives without us even knowing. He says they are behavioral blocks, like, let's say, jealousy. He says jealousy isn't some monster from another dimension. It's just your reaction to a situation that leads to an explosion of emotion.
He says these demons don't have names, sigils, or fancy symbols, but they have colossal power over us.
That's the terrifying part. You can't even see it to fight them because they're part of your own programming.
Exactly, they are the glitches in your psychological software that you haven't identified yet. But, and here's the hook, he says even though they don't have names, you can identify them and bind them.
Which brings us right back to the toolkit. If you can use scent, sound, and ritual to build a chain of association, maybe you can finally catch your own demons in the act. Okay, so we're getting into the actual how-to of it now. Hine is moving from the theory of demons to the actual process of taming them. And he starts with this really sharp warning. He says, if you use your personal demons to justify behavior you don't want to take responsibility for, you're seriously off track.
The classic, it wasn't me, it was my zodiac sign, or my demon made me do it excuse.
Exactly. He says if you say, oh, honey, my demon of jealousy flared up, so I said some nasty things to you, you're actually admitting that the demon is the one in the driver's seat, not you.
Right. You're not a magician at that point. You're just a passenger in your own body.
But here's the hack. He says if you can strip that demon away from the messy tangle of your inner dialogues, your fears, and your fantasies, if you can give it a specific name, a shape, even a sigil, then it becomes much easier to track. You start seeing how you are actually feeding it.
It's like identifying a loop in a piece of code. Once you see the pattern, you can start rewriting it.
Yes. And he says these things don't just appear during intense rituals, they pop up in everyday life. That's what makes it hard. But then he gives us this specific technique. He calls it emotional engineering.
Okay, now we're talking. Give me the manual.
So, he says, visualize a situation where your demon always shows up. Not even a huge life crisis, just a recurring negative moment. And as you visualize it, listen to the physical sensations. The tightness in your chest, the heat in your neck.
Wait, he's saying the mistake is identifying the physical sensation with the emotion.
Exactly. He says the whole problem is that we take this physiological arousal, this weird feeling, and we immediately label it anger or anxiety.
So instead of saying, I am angry, you just observe the sensation?
Precisely. He says to treat it as just an unidentifiable strange sensation, like that intense urge to reach for a cigarette. Don't call it a craving. Just notice it as this unusual feeling in your body, without even trying to figure out where it comes from.
That's actually brilliant. It's like decoupling the trigger from the reaction.
He gives a literal 4-step process for this.
And if you do that, he says you enter a state of free emotions, which he calls ecstasy or even bliss.
See, you're hacking your way into a trance state using nothing but your own nervous system.
It's a bit scary, though. He adds this layer that demons aren't just solo actors, they are conspirators.
Yeah, this part gave me chills. He says every demon works in a syndicate to ensure their own survival. He uses the example of addiction, how a person with an alcohol problem might offer a drink to someone else with the same struggle.
It's a coordinated effort to keep the pattern alive, more than just mutual support.
And it gets even deeper. He says the demon of jealousy in one person might conspire with the demon of fear of restriction in their partner. They work together to start a war where both sides actually end up making the demon stronger.
It's a feedback loop of destruction.
Which is why he introduces Ganesha, the remover of obstacles.
Now we're moving from the psychological shadows into the archetypal light.
Right. He describes Ganesha as this vibrant, red, elephant-headed deity. He's active rather than some static statue. He's got a human body, a snake around his belly, and he's often depicted dancing.
And he's not some heavy, serious god. Hine says he's loved because of his playful, even mischievous nature.
In the list of demons he's defeated is incredible. He's taken down the demons of lust, of unjust anger, of greed, of pride, all of them.
It's like he's the debugger.
But what I love is the symbolism Hine points out. The huge ears are like sieves to filter truth from fiction. The trunk can do both heavy labor and incredibly delicate work, symbolizing the versatility a magician needs. Even his broken tusk represents a refusal to be enslaved by the need for perfect symmetry or balance.
He's saying true power isn't about being perfect, it's about being functional.
And even his mount, the tiny mouse. It's such a strange choice, right? A massive, powerful god riding a little rodent. It's a symbol of navigating the small, hidden corners of the mind. So, back to that little mouse. Hine says it's more than a cute pet for Ganesha to protect the crops. He says the mouse symbolizes those tiny, nagging desires and doubts, the little cliches of the mind that just nibble away at your confidence.
The mental pests, they don't kill you, they just make you exhausted.
Exactly. But he also says the mouse represents cunning, the ability to satisfy desires subtly under the radar. It's that part of us that's sneaky. But then he pivots. He introduces the actual exercise. And honestly, Jane, this is where it gets really visceral.
I'm listening.
He says find a comfortable spot, close your eyes, focus on the center of your abdomen. And this is wild. He wants you to visualize that area as a void, covered in a light reddish haze.
A reddish haze? That sounds intense.
And then, as you breathe, you start to form Ganesha right there, inside your belly. You chant Om Gyamapate Namaha, and you actually visualize your own body transforming. Your nose elongates into a trunk, your ears stretch out.
He's literally talking about a full-on morphological shift in your visualization.
Yes. And once you've become Ganesha, he tells you to bring in the trigger. Visualize a situation that always brings out your demon. But here's the trick. You do it while staying centered in your eboli, focusing only on the raw, nameless physical sensation. No labels, no I am angry, just the sensation.
It's that decoupling we talked about earlier. You're using the deity's power to hold the space so the emotion doesn't overwhelm you.
Exactly. And then he tells you to let the energy build until it wants to become a sound, a roar, a burst of air. And then, get this, he tells you to perform the elephant dance.
The what?
The elephant dance? You swing your head side to side, relaxing your neck, letting your torso sway. He says it prevents the residual tension that comes after a massive emotional release.
So it's like a physical reset button after the catharsis.
Precisely. And he says this does two things. First, it clears the demonic residue, that lingering bad mood that sticks around after a fight. Second, it trains you to recognize the anchor points of your triggers. Use learning to spot the pattern before the explosion happens.
But he also adds a warning. He says don't approach this with grim determination. He says Ganesha is a playful, even mischievous god. If used too serious, you're doing it wrong.
Magic of the ego works better with cheerful relaxation. But then he gives us this password.
A password?
Stop, observe, relax.
I love that. It's a command.
He says whenever you feel a demon waking up, you blast it with that sound. You use the visualization of Ganesha's powerful trunk blowing a stream of air to literally blow away the swirling, chaotic thoughts in your mind.
You're using the ritual energy to physically disrupt the neural loop. You're starving the demon of the attention and fantasy it needs to survive.
Right, because demons cannot stand publicity. They hate being watched. If you can shine a light on them and then just relax in their presence, you're halfway to making them work for you.
He says they're like Russian matryoshka dolls. You peel back one layer of fear and there's another one underneath, and another until you realize the whole thing was just a way to keep you from becoming who you could be.
That is heavy. But then he gets even more experimental. He lists these magical reactions, and the first one is feed them to exhaustion.
Wait, what? You're going to encourage the demon?
Yes, he says sometimes instead of suppressing jealousy or anger, you just let it run wild. You let it build the most absurd, ridiculous, over-the-top plans for revenge. You feed it until you are completely exhausted.
And then?
And then, suddenly, you're too tired to be angry. You look at the reason you were upset and realize it's actually completely ridiculous. The whole hurricane of emotion just runs out of fuel.
That's actually a genius way to handle a spiral. You don't fight the wave, you just ride it until it hits the shore and dies out.
But then, the second one? Jane, this one is intense. It's called the offer to die.
Oh God.
He says you present the demon with a choice. You basically say, if this happens, I'll end it right here. He even suggests grabbing a blade or a samurai sword to make it real. You create a situation of such high stakes that the demon is forced to freeze.
That's hardcore.
It's extreme, but he says because demons fear death because they want to survive, they will freeze in place. And when they freeze, you can finally study them. You can look at them without being consumed by them.
It's like a high-stakes hostage negotiation with your own subconscious.
And finally, he talks about agreements. This is my favorite part because it's so much more constructive than just fighting or fleeing. He says don't exorcise the demon. Instead, make a deal.
A deal?
Yeah, he says demons are massive sources of energy. They're too powerful to just kick out of the house, but too dangerous to let run wild. So, you strip off their mask. You identify their components, give them a name, a sigil, a personality.
You turn a wild animal into a trained pet.
Exactly. You redirect that energy. He gives this great example of irritation. He says, instead of just getting mad at someone, which is a waste of energy, you use that irritation to fuel creativity. He says he'll take an annoying person, and instead of just cursing them, he'll use that surge of energy to invent new, incredible insults or even new magical theories.
So you're taking the poison and turning it enough into medicine.
Precisely. You're taking that raw, aggressive energy and funneling it into something productive. The irritation is still there, but it's no longer a demon controlling you. It's a battery powering your work.
It's a life hack. You're not trying to change who you are. You're just rerouting the power lines. I need to go find some water before my brain completely melts from all this heavy lifting.
Same. Let's just take 5 and regroup. Right, so we were talking about the power lines. Okay, so we're picking up right where we left off with Hine's whole demons as internal structures thing. But now, he's pivoting. He's moving from how to handle your shadows to how to handle, well, everyone else's.
And let me tell you, he does not hold back. He starts with this incredibly blunt, almost aggressive anecdote about his secretary.
Right. He's describing this office tension, the kind where someone just keeps poking at you with these idiotic remarks, and instead of the usual, take a deep breath and meditate advice, he basically says, I told her if she didn't shut up, I'd smash her head into my monitor.
It's brutal, but look at his point though. He's not glorifying violence, he's talking about breaking the feedback loop. He says he expressed the irritation clearly without carrying it inside him for hours. It's that idea of preventing the internal demon of resentment from taking root.
Exactly, it's about efficiency. But then, and this is where it gets heavy, he moves to the demons of others. He warns that if you're too emotionally attached to someone, like a friend struggling with addiction, you're basically useless as an exorcist or even a therapist.
Because the demon has more leverage over them than you do. He says these dependencies, alcohol, drugs, they present themselves as a panacea to the host. And if you're too close, you can't be objective. He literally tells you, detach yourself, keep it at a distance.
It sounds cold, doesn't it? But it connects back to what he said earlier about being a pure conductor. If you're caught up in their drama, you're just another cog in their chaotic loop.
Speaking of conductors, he moves into this beautiful, almost hypnotic section about personal genius. He uses this imagery that sounds so much like the tantric practice I was telling you about, the kindling the fire exercise.
Oh, I love this part. He describes the body as a hollow vessel where a flame flickers. And every breath, every victory, every defeat, it's all just fuel.
It's a life hack, isn't it? He's saying, don't identify with the experience. Don't say, this is my victory, or this is my pain. Just let it burn. If you can stop the identification, you stop the blockage. You become a conduit for that Kundalini energy.
It's such a stark contrast to the next part, though, because then he goes after the channeling entities.
Oh, here we go. He is not having it.
No. He calls out the whole New Age industry. He says these cosmic brothers all use the same sugary, empty cliches. Love yourself, everything is vibration, you are eternal.
He basically says this benevolent messaging is just a way to package reality into a Disney factory of dreams so nobody has to deal with the fact that, people actually suffer and die.
That is such a punch to the gut. He's saying the peaceful messages are actually dangerous because they're escapist. They create a version of the universe where nothing is bad, which is just a lie.
And it gets so cynical and honestly so smart about the history of it. He points out how the guides always change to fit the era. First, it's Native Americans, then Tibetan monks, then Crowley's aliens, then dolphins.
He even mentions Jesus being happy on Venus.
But then he hits a really deep, heavy note. He suggests that our obsession with these exotic spiritual sources might just be the guilt of overfed, white-skinned citizens trying to find enlightenment in the cultures we've historically pillaged.
That actually made me pause. He's suggesting that the New Age craze is a well-defined way to avoid looking at the kitchen of humanity. The actual, messy, structural reality of the world we've built.
It's why he prefers the old-school magic. He says a real magician Ethelamite specifically uses skepticism. They don't just accept a loving message from a star being, they test it. They use keys or gematria or the phrase, do what thou wilt, to see if the entity vanishes into a hole in the astral plane.
It's the difference between being a consumer of spiritual fluff and being a practitioner of actual rigorous psychological technology. One is a gift-wrapped fantasy, the other is a toolkit for navigating the chaos. So I was rereading that part about the Cosmic Brothers and the whole Disney factory vibe, and I realized Hine actually offers a way out. He's not saying we should stop having these contacts altogether.
Right, he's just picky. He says, look, if you want to talk about universal love and harmony, fine. Anyone can do that. It's boring. But he says the only thing that matters is if the contact provides a new and reasonable perspective.
Exactly. He's basically saying, don't give me poetry, give me data. He wants the message to be informative, to help him look at a problem from a different angle, or at least to be logically consistent.
But then he gets into the real tragedy of it. He says the quality of these contacts is rapidly declining.
Yeah, and it's because of the ego. He says the first time you talk to an entity, you might get these amazing, mind-blowing revelations, real information synthesis that changes your whole worldview.
But then you get hooked. You start identifying with the entity. And as you merge with it, the messages turn into intellectual nonsense. They become trivial. They become banal.
And the worst part? The person starts acting like a priest or a priestess of these secret mysteries, basically trying to start their own little cult of a world savior. It's that same trap we talked about. It's just the ego trying to find a new way to be important.
So, if the cosmetic stuff is becoming a joke, what is actually happening? He asks this killer question. Who exactly are we contacting?
And he doesn't give a straight answer, because he says the answer is just a reflection of how we construct our own reality.
I love this part. He says the channeler answer is that these entities are all real, just hanging out in the astral plane, maybe attending endless cocktail parties, trying to find a way to drop by and tell a group of nerds about the rising rates of cardiovascular disease or the Dow Jones Index.
I mean, imagine a space vampire trying to explain inflation to you. It's ridiculous. But then he brings in the skeptic. The skeptic says it's all just our imagination, so it's not real.
And the magician? The magician says it's not real in an objective physical sense, but you can't call it a fantasy either.
He uses this incredible metaphor from William Gibson's Neuromancer. He talks about an AI that needs to interface with humans. To do that, it has to construct images of people, pulling them from memories and wear them like masks.
It's a human interface. The masks aren't the truth, but they are the necessary bridge between the AI's experience and the limits of human perception.
And that's what he's saying about these internal plane entities. They are symbols. They are windows.
He actually quotes Dion Fortune here, which is a huge nod to the tradition. She says, "You cannot understand who we are, but you can imagine us. And although your mental images are not real, the results of the work of your imagination are quite real."
That is the core of the whole book, isn't it? The results. It's not about the authenticity of the mask. It's about what the mask allows you to do.
He brings up this story about Dion Fortune's contact, a guy named David Quarnes, a British officer from World War I. The biography says he was a real person, but researchers found out he never even existed.
So he was a complete construct?
Exactly, a purely constructed image, a personality created by her through experimental magic to serve as an interface for information. It wasn't a ghost. It was a psychological tool.
So if we look at all this, the windows into the unknown, it's all about expanding our sphere of information. We take this unstructured, chaotic data from the unknown, and we use these symbols, these entities, to translate it into something our brains can actually process.
But he brings it back to the danger of the New Age pacifier one last time. He says the difference between the magician and a channeler is the level of risk.
Right, a magician is trying to push the boundaries, exploring abyss after abyss to find the essence of things. They're looking for the structural truth of the chaos.
But the channeler, they just want a sweet-smelling spiritual pacifier. They want a version of mysticism that is materialistic and soothing, telling them, "I am perfectly fine, really."
It's so much easier to just believe in a benevolent universe than to face the actual terrifying complexity of it. He even jokes that if a wise adept, looking like Joan Collins, told you that astral life was just an endless series of dynasty-style parties, you'd all be signing up for astral projection classes immediately.
I mean, can you blame us? Who wouldn't want to live in a soap opera? But Hide's point is that the soap opera is a trap. It's a way to avoid the painful reality of change.
And that leads us straight into chapter 10, which, by the way, has the most intimidating title I've ever seen.
How is your enlightenment doing?
Talk about putting us on the spot. Okay, so brace yourselves. We are entering chapter 10. And as I said, the title is basically a direct attack on anyone who thinks they've arrived.
How is your enlightenment doing? It's so condescending. Like a yoga instructor checking if you've actually engaged your core or if you're just posing for Instagram.
Exactly, but Hine isn't even being mean here. He's being, well, clinical. He starts by redefining initiation. He says it's not this one-time grand cinematic event. He says it's a threshold of change that we cross every time we grow.
Right, like a software update. You hit a critical point. The old version of your personality isn't working anymore in your new circumstances, and you have to transition.
Yeah, and he gets really specific about the rhythm of it. He says initiation is a process with peaks, these initiatory crises, and valleys, which he calls depression or the dark night of the soul. And then there are these flat, horizontal stretches where, well, nothing much is happening.
The boring phases, the maintenance mode.
Exactly. But then he moves into the how it starts part. He talks about the calling. He says most of us are perfectly happy within the conceptual and philosophical boundaries of the dominant reality. We're fine in our little boxes.
Until we aren't.
Until a crisis hits. He says it could be a vivid vision, a dream, or just this painful desire to find out what's beyond normal life. And this is where it gets scary. He says this crisis can shatter everything. Your work, your relationships, your very morals.
Because the walls of your social identity are cracking. He says the walls of the social world protect us, but our consciousness lives in the cracks. But here's the kicker. He warns that you can actually turn this into a new kind of addiction. He calls them spiritual junkies.
Wait, what?
He says instead of using the crisis to grow, people just dump all their energy into spiritual practices to escape reality. They become just as dogmatic and boring as the people they left behind. They're not expanding. They're just retreating into a new, even more intense set of delusions.
Wow. So they trade a political or religious dogma for a spiritual one. It's the same trap, just with more incense and fewer politics.
And he's not done. He says the calling often brings this crushing sense of loneliness, because you're essentially breaking away from the shell of your culture.
It's that journey into the desert idea. He says the Westerner can't physically go to a desert like a shaman, so we do it internally. We isolate our ideas and our values. We doubt everything.
Which sounds suspiciously like a recipe for a breakdown.
And that's exactly what he addresses next. He brings up shamanic illness. This is where it gets really controversial. He says that in tribal cultures, what Westerners call religious madness or psychopathy is actually seen as a functional, effective way to unlock potential.
I mean, he's basically calling Western psychiatry ethnocentric. He's saying we look at a shaman having a seizure or a hallucination and say, oh, they're sick, while the tribe says, oh, they're becoming a healer.
It's a massive reframe. He's saying our definition of normal consciousness is way too narrow. It's just a byproduct of our specific, modern, heavily conditioned culture.
But then, he pivots to the darkest part. He quotes St. John of the Cross. He describes the dark night of the soul. And Emily, this isn't just feeling a bit blue.
No, he makes it sound devastating. He says it extinguishes all spiritual desires, blurs memories, and crushes the will. It's a state of total spiritual emptiness and despair.
It sounds like a total system failure.
But, and this is the huge aha moment, he says that believing we should avoid this for the sake of a peaceful life is a distorted and superficial way to live.
So the depression isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature.
It's the feature. He says the dark night is a way to enter spiritual silence. It's the necessary clearing of the slate so that something new can actually be built.
God, I need a minute to wrap my head around that one. My brain is officially fried.
Same. Let's grab some water and catch our breath before we dive into the next part.
All right, we're back. All right, we're back. And honestly, I'm still a little shaken up from that last segment on the demons of the ego.
But look, we're moving into something even more visceral now. We's picking up where Hine is talking about the moon phase and shared that period of gloom, war, slump that hits every single practitioner.
Yeah, the it's all useless phase? He says that even if you've been killing it with meditation or magic, suddenly, nothing. You stop seeing results. You just want to quit and go back to a normal life.
It's so relatable, though. He says magic happens to anyone learning something new. It's that plateau where the novelty dies and the hard work feels invisible.
But then he breaks it down. He says there are two flavors of initiation, the big, scary macro and the tiny, subtle micro.
Oh, I love the micro one. He gives this hilarious example. He's sitting at his computer doing boring accounting, can you imagine? And suddenly, out of nowhere, he thinks, hey, I actually want to teach accounting classes.
Right, he says in any normal state, he'd think flying to the moon was just as realistic as that sudden interest. But he calls this a flash of flame, a spark.
And that's the Ace of Wands moment. But he warns you if you don't notice it or if you actively try to douse it, the flame goes out.
So, how do you handle it? He gives us this literal life hack manual, a 4-step formula: assessment, plan, implementation, and analysis.
An assessment isn't just thinking. He says, look around. Use any technique lists, tarot, even just listening to the wind. Just gather the data.
Then plan. Figure out what you need: money, magic, or just people. Then implementation. This is the hard part. He says fear shows up here. It makes you lazy. It makes you want to stay stuck.
Wait, he actually links that laziness to inertia. Like your brain is trying to protect you from change by making you too tired to move.
But here's the kicker. He says fear isn't something to run from. He says fear is just bodily gnosis. It's your nervous system hitting fight or flight.
That's such a powerful reframe. Instead of I'm terrified, it's my body is highly aroused and ready for action. He says you can use emotional engineering to turn that fear into the energy you need to break through the threshold.
It's beautiful, but also terrifying. He calls it the madness of Pan. That sudden wild realization that the world is alive and pulsating and that anything could change in a second.
It's like that chaos we always talk about. He says you have to relax into the fear. If you can move from static to movement, you find ecstasy, because ecstasy literally means to step out of stillness.
But don't get too comfortable. He brings up the microscopic versus macroscopic trauma again. Macroscopic is the big stuff: the divorce, the medical diagnosis, the company collapsing, the stuff that shatters your entire reality.
It's heavy, but it ties back to what we said earlier about deconditioning. These crises force us to realize that our normal life was actually just a thin facade of habit.
Exactly. He mentions these ancient rituals of passage. He even gets a bit intense here, talking about shamanic traditions where spirits literally tear the flesh from the body to rebuild it with new organs or crystals.
It's brutal, but it's a metaphor for what he's saying about the mind. You have to let the old, conditioned version of you die so the new expanded version can actually breathe.
Well, I'll stick to my bitter tea for now. No need for any flesh tearing in this studio today. Okay, let's get into the heavy stuff. Hine is moving from the slump into the actual mechanics of the breakdown. He says that while some people use meditation to consciously experience this dismantling, in other cultures, it just happens spontaneously.
Like a physical trauma. He actually gives these wild personal examples. He says, for me, I was burned alive in a fundamental pyre of Kali, and just recently, Morgan plucked out my eye.
Jesus. I mean, I know we're talking about belief as a tool, but that is intense.
It is. But look at what he's doing with the metaphor. He's saying these descents into the underworld aren't just spooky stories. They are a necessary phase of deep psychotherapy. It's the only way to get to the root.
And he ties it back to that Western idea of the guardian of the threshold. You know, that menacing figure that stands right at the edge of your progress?
Right, the dweller. And he defines it so clearly, it's not some monster under the bed. It's the realization of the massive gap between the false, ego-driven version of ourselves and who we actually are.
And it requires consent. You have to agree to shine a light on the dark corners. You have to admit to the parts of yourself that are, frankly, pretty gross. The flaws, the weaknesses, the stuff we're responsible for.
Exactly. And he warns that if you don't face them, they don't just go away. They turn into obsessive complexes, what he called demons earlier. And they grow until they actually control you.
It's a heavy burden. He says people get stuck in this stage for years.
But he offers a way out to a total shedding. He compares the initiation cycle to a snake shedding its skin. You have to drop the old models of yourself because they simply don't fit the new phase anymore.
So, you go into the underworld, you stop following external rules, and you start trusting your intuition. But, and there's always a but with Hine, says, you're not alone down there. You start encountering internal symbols.
Which is so cool. He says these can be spirits or entities from your chosen belief system, or even just random fragments from your subconscious. They become allies or guides.
But watch out. He specifically warns against false teachers. Spirits that come to you and whisper, you are mystically enlightened. You've reached a level no one has ever reached before.
Oh, I've met plenty of those people in the yoga studio.
Exactly. But Hine says, and this is the hack part, Those are just parts of your ego trying to save itself from being destroyed. They're trying to trick you into nurturing your complexes instead of breaking them.
It's a battle of wits. He says you don't even have to fight them in some astral battle. You just have to realize they have no power over you once you see through the temptation.
It's about mapping. He talks about mapping the internal worlds. Westerners use things like the Tree of Life, but he says those maps get too complex, too much labeling and marking.
It's almost like we're over-engineering it. He says if you meta-program your subconscious to recognize other maps, the symbols will just emerge on their own. It's much more organic.
Which brings us to the peak, the end of the tunnel. He calls it enlightenment.
And he doesn't make it sound like some unreachable holy state. He lists the actual symptoms. 1, the blurring of the line between me and others. 2, stepping outside of time and space. 3, it's profoundly positive.
And 4, it's incredibly brief. It's a flash.
But he adds something fascinating from a biological perspective. He says, from a neurological standpoint, this is a total reorganization of the brain. He mentions the reticular formation, the part that handles our sense of space and time literally slowing down.
So the ecstasy of feeling infinite, it's actually your brain's way of processing a massive systemic shift.
It's like a software update. The ego dissolves and for a second you're just everything.
Okay, so we've covered the breakdown, the death, the weird internal monsters, but Hine is starting to look for the why. He's asking what actually comes back with you when you crawl out of that underworld.
He has this incredible idea that enlightenment isn't just some spiritual trophy. He says it might actually be a survival program. Like the evolution of consciousness is a way for a human biosystem to learn how to modify itself by interacting with the environment.
That's a heavy way to put it. It's not just feeling good, it's upgrading the hardware to survive the planet.
Exactly. And he gets all sciencey here. I love this. He brings in ileopregogene and dissipative structures.
Of course, because nothing says magic like non-equilibrium thermodynamics.
But wait, listen to the logic. He says that in an open system, when you pump in energy, you get these fluctuations. And when those fluctuations hit a critical level of breaking point, the system suddenly reorganizes into something higher order, something more integrated.
So the chaos isn't just noise. The chaos is the actual engine of the upgrade.
Right. He says the jump happens, and the new system is more complex, more integrated, and this is the kicker, it's actually ready for the next transformation. It's a cycle. He even lists the stages: change, crisis, transcendence, transformation, and then a predisposition for even more change.
It sounds exhausting. There's no finished state?
No, that's the point. He says the death and rebirth theme is everywhere from St. Paul to psychedelic trips. The old you dies, and the shards of your old models are used to build the new you.
But he does throw a massive warning flag here. He says that while shamanic cultures take this death literally, Westerners, especially the authorities in spiritual practice, are way too skeptical about things like psychedelics.
Yeah, he's calling out the gatekeepers. He says people dismiss psychedelic experiences as lesser than traditional rituals, but he argues that, as we learn more about how shamans actually use psychoactive substances, that old prejudice is dying out.
But he's not saying just take drugs and call it a day. He's very careful here. He says the effect is entirely determined by your individual beliefs and social conditioning. He gives this brilliant warning: taking acid can lead to profound transformation, or it can just reinforce your existing biases. You can come out of it more enlightened, or you can just become a hardened evangelist of your own old, narrow beliefs.
That is so true. It's like the software update fails and it just installs a more aggressive version of your old operating system.
Exactly. The setup, setting, and dose matters, but your mindset is the real variable. If you're too closed off, the drug just builds a bigger wall around your ego.
Which brings us back to the proto-shaman versus us. He says a proto-shaman does the death, rebirth, sing, and then they have a new status in the tribe. They're a shaman. But for us, in this messy, postmodern, industrial culture, there's no tribe to validate you.
Yeah, no one's going to hand you a staff and say, "Congrats, you're officially a mage." Even if you think you've been there, the system doesn't recognize you.
And he warns that the I did it. Phase that, 0 energy. State where you're just basking in your own achievement is incredibly dangerous. He says our conditioning is cunning. The second you relax, your old stereotypical habits start creeping back into your soul.
The price of transformation is eternal vigilance. You can't just hit, save, and walk away.
You have to keep working the corners of the soul. He says we have to go through this cycle periodically because every time we're working with different parts of ourselves.
It's not a destination, it's a process of expansion. He says this, death and rebirth is the only way to achieve adaptive learning, to actually expand our perspective of the world and each other.
And he ends this section with the concept of Gnosis. He says it's the culmination of the magic trip. That moment where consciousness becomes one-directional.
The peak.
Yeah. He calls it knowledge of the heart. It's something that can't be put into words, but it can be shared. It's the secret language of magic. You can't understand it until you live it.
And then, as he says, as you work with magic, so magic works with you. Such is the nature of chaos.
God, I need to go sit in silence for a minute.
Me too. But first, we need to figure out if we're actually transforming or if we're just stuck in a very loud, very expensive loop.
I think we both need that silence, Jane. We've really gone to the edge of the abyss today, haven't we? From the dark night of the soul to the terrifying beauty of a total systemic reorganization.
We certainly did. We spent this entire series dissecting Hine's blueprint, looking at how chaos isn't just a mess to be cleaned up, but the very engine of our own evolution. We've moved from the slump of the mundane to the flash of the divine, and through all that madness, we've tried to find the signal in the noise.
It's been such a journey. This book, it's a study of magic and a manual for staying human in an era that's constantly trying to fragment us. It's about learning to dance with the breakdown so we can emerge, like that snake shedding its skin, into something more integrated and more alive.
Though personally, I think I'll skip the flesh-tearing part of the ritual. I'll stick to my bitter tea and leave the cosmic reorganization to the professionals. But I will admit, there's a certain clarity in realizing that the friction we feel is just the hardware trying to catch up to the new software.
That's the spirit. Whether you're navigating a personal crisis or just trying to find a spark of the Ace of Wands in your everyday life, I hope this deep dive has given you a few more tools for your internal toolkit.
Or at least a better way to label the chaos when it inevitably shows up at your door.
Thank you so much for walking through the shadows with us this season. It's been an honor to explore these depths with all of you.
Stay vigilant, stay curious, and for heaven's sake, watch out for the false teachers.
Goodbye for now, everyone. We'll see you in the next chapter of our lives.
Peace.